Hello friends. Did you know nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I've been using these locations for about 15 years. I started when I was 23 after leaving a troubled marriage in a town that felt too small to breathe. My truck became my home, a Peterbilt 379 that had clocked enough miles to circle the globe twice. It creaked in all the right places, dripped oil as if it had a bone to pick with smooth asphalt, but it was mine. I named it Dolly after my grandmother, the only person who ever told me I was worth anything. This particular run started in Bakersfield, California. I was hauling refrigerated goods, pharmaceuticals actually, the kind that needed to stay cold or somebody's kid somewhere wouldn't get their medicine. The company didn't tell me much more than that, just gave me the manifest and a deadline. Tight deadline, too. Had to be in Flagstaff, Arizona by 6 a.m., which meant driving through the night across some of the loneliest stretches of desert highway in the country. I'd done it before. Hell, I'd done worse. There was a run back in 2012 where I drove 36 hours straight on nothing but gas station coffee and spite. This one was only supposed to be about 10 hours, if I kept a steady pace and didn't stop except for fuel. Easy money, or so I thought. Left Bakersfield around 7 p.m., just as the sun was bleeding out across the horizon, turning the whole sky the color of a fresh bruise. The temperature was still pushing 90, that dry heat that makes your throat feel like sandpaper no matter how much water you drink. I had 3 thermoses of coffee, a bag of beef jerky, and a carton of Marlboro Reds. Everything a man needs for a night drive through nowhere. The first couple hours were fine. Traffic thinned out as I got deeper into the desert, taking I-40 east. The radio played classic rock, Skynyrd, Zeppelin, the usual rotation, and I sang along when I knew the words, hummed when I didn't. The sun disappeared completely around 8:30, and that's when the desert really comes alive in a strange way. Not with animals or people, but with darkness. A darkness so complete it feels like the world ends 20 feet past your headlights. By 10 p.m., I hadn't seen another vehicle in over 40 minutes. The road stretched out in front of me like a ribbon of black glass, reflecting my headlights back at me in weird angles. The white line seemed to pulse in my peripheral vision, and I had to shake my head a few times to clear it. Not tired yet, just that highway hypnosis you get when there's nothing to look at but more road. The fuel gauge started creeping toward empty around 11:15. I'd been watching it for the last 20 miles, doing that mental math you do when you're not sure if you can make it to the next station. According to my GPS, there was a truck stop about 30 miles ahead. Plenty of range. But there was something else too. Something closer. The GPS showed a small dot off the highway maybe 5 miles up. No name attached to it, just a dot. Could have been anything. A rest stop, an abandoned building, or one of those old fuel stations that got left behind when the interstate system changed routes. I'd seen plenty of those over the years, ghost stations with rusted pumps and sun-faded signs. Monuments to a time when this highway actually mattered. I wasn't planning to stop there. The truck stop ahead had a diner, clean bathrooms, maybe even a shower if I felt like splurging. But something made me take note of that dot on the GPS. Maybe it was the way it flickered on the screen, there and then not there, like a bad pixel. Or maybe it was just driver's instinct, that sixth sense you develop after enough years on the road that tells you when something's off. The mile markers crawled by. 197, 198, 199. The dot should have been coming up any second now. I slowed down without really meaning to, from 70 down to 60, then 55. Dolly's engine growled in protest. Not used to going this slow on a straightaway. That's when I saw it. At first, it was just a glow in the distance, off to the right side of the highway. Could have been anything, a house, a farm, even just the moon reflecting off something metal. But as I got closer, the glow resolved into something more specific. Lights. Not bright, but definitely there. A sickly yellow-green color that reminded me of the fluorescent tubes in a hospital waiting room. I should have kept driving, I know that now. But curiosity is a powerful thing, especially when you've been alone with your thoughts for 4 hours, and your brain is looking for anything to latch onto that isn't the endless black void of the desert night. The exit wasn't marked. Just a faded green sign that might have said something once but had been scoured blank by decades of sandstorms and sun. The off-ramp was barely visible, the pavement cracked and buckled, weeds growing up through the gaps. I hesitated for maybe 3 seconds, my foot hovering over the brake before I committed. Dolly rumbled down the exit, her suspension complaining about the rough road. The lights were clearer now, maybe a quarter mile off the highway, connected by what looked like an old service road. As I got closer, I could make out a structure, low and flat, the classic shape of a 1960s fuel station. The kind with a wide overhang over the pumps and big plate glass windows across the front. The sign was the first thing that really caught my attention. It was one of those old rotating signs, the kind they don't make anymore, mounted on a tall pole. It should have been dark, lifeless, but half of it was still lit up. Chever, it said, the second half of the word lost to dead bulbs, or maybe just time. The letters flickered occasionally, buzzing like angry insects. I pulled into the lot slowly, my headlights sweeping across the scene. 2 pumps stood under the overhang, their hoses coiled like dead snakes. The price display was frozen at $1.47 per gallon, which meant this place had been closed since at least the early 2000s. The windows were dark, but not broken like I expected. In fact, the whole place looked oddly intact for something that had clearly been abandoned for years. I put Dolly in park, but kept the engine running. The headlights illuminated the front of the station, and I could see through the windows into the interior. Shelves lined the walls, still stocked with products I could barely make out from this distance. The counter was visible too, and what looked like an old register sitting on top of it. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to leave. This wasn't my problem. I had fuel enough to make the truck stop. I was on a schedule, and nothing good ever came from poking around abandoned buildings in the middle of the night. But there was something about the place that held me there, staring through the windshield. It was too clean, too intact. Places don't just close up and stay frozen in time like this. They get vandalized, stripped for parts, reclaimed by nature. This looked like someone had just walked away mid-shift and never came back, and the building had been waiting ever since. I noticed something else then. The lights inside weren't on, but there was definitely light coming from somewhere in the back. A faint glow, similar to the sign outside, that barely illuminated the interior. And was that movement? I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. For just a second, I could have sworn I saw a shadow pass across one of the windows. Quick, gone before I could really focus on it. Probably just my headlights creating tricks, the way light and glass can play with your eyes. But then I saw it again, slower this time. A definite shape moving from right to left behind the counter, visible for maybe 2 seconds before disappearing into the back room. My hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to make the leather creak. Every instinct I had was telling me to throw Dolly in reverse and get the hell back to the highway. But I've never been good at listening to instinct. That's how I ended up married to Carla, how I ended up in this job, how I ended up most places in my life. I checked my phone. No signal. Not surprising out here, but it made me feel more isolated than I already was. The clock read 11:43 p.m. I looked back at the fuel gauge. Still had over a quarter tank. Plenty to make the truck stop. There was absolutely no reason to get out of the truck. I turned off the engine. The silence that followed was profound. Out here, away from the highway, there was no ambient noise. No cars, no wind, no insects. Just my own breathing and the tick, tick, tick of Dolly's engine cooling down. The Chever sign buzzed and flickered above me, the only sound in the entire desert. I opened the door and stepped down onto the cracked pavement. The air was cooler than I expected. Must have dropped 20 degrees since sunset. I could see my breath, small clouds that dissipated quickly in the dry air. The station sat there in front of me, patient and waiting, like it had been expecting me. The detail that bothered me most was the Coca-Cola machine next to the door. It was one of those old-style ones, red and white, the kind that dispensed glass bottles. The light inside it was on. I could see bottles lined up behind the glass, frost forming on the inside like the cooling unit was still running. How was anything in this place still running? There were no power lines visible, no generator humming in the background. The lights were on, some of them at least, and that machine was cold. I could feel it as I got closer, the chill radiating off the metal. I stopped about 10 feet from the door. The windows gave me a better view now. The shelves were definitely stocked. I could make out candy bars, chip bags, even what looked like fresh bread on a rack near the counter. Fresh bread, in an abandoned gas station, in the middle of the desert, at midnight. This was wrong. Every fiber of my being knew it was wrong. I took another step forward. The door was covered in old stickers and notices, faded to the point of being unreadable. There was a closed sign hanging at an angle in the window, the kind you flip from open to closed at the end of the day. Below it, barely visible in the weird light, was another notice. This one looked newer, printed on white paper that hadn't fully yellowed yet. I leaned in to read it. Station attendant on duty. For service after hours, please knock. The paper wasn't weathered, wasn't faded, wasn't covered in the dust and grime that coated everything else. It looked like it had been put up maybe last week, maybe yesterday, maybe an hour ago. I reached for the door handle, my hand shaking slightly. The metal was ice cold against my palm. I pulled, expecting it to be locked. It swung open easily, smoothly, the hinges making a soft creaking sound that echoed in the empty desert night. A small bell above the door jingled, ding-a-ling, cheerful and obscene in the silence. Warm air rushed out to greet me. Not hot, not cold, but distinctly warm, like the building had a heater running. I could smell coffee, fresh coffee, and something else underneath it, something chemical and sharp that I couldn't quite place. I stood in the doorway, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, staring into the interior of the station. The shelves were definitely stocked. More than that, the products looked new. Doritos bags with current logos. Candy bars I recognized from truck stops I'd been to last week. A rack of Arizona iced teas that still had condensation on the cans. The counter had a coffee maker on it, a full pot sitting on the burner. I could see steam rising from it in thin wisps. Next to it was a styrofoam cup, half full, a brown ring around the inside like someone had been drinking from it recently. "Hello?" My voice sounded too loud in the space, harsh and intrusive. No response. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the soft drip, drip, drip of the coffee maker. I took another step inside. The floor was clean. Not just relatively clean, but actually clean. The linoleum tiles shining like they'd been mopped recently. I could even see faint wet streaks in the corners, like someone had done a rush job and missed a few spots. This was impossible. This whole thing was impossible. You don't find abandoned stations in perfect condition with fresh coffee and working lights and stocked shelves. You just don't, unless it wasn't abandoned. The thought hit me like a cold wave. What if this place wasn't abandoned at all? What if it was still operating, just rarely used because of the location? That would explain everything. The fresh products, the coffee, the lights. Some old guy probably ran it, kept weird hours, and I just happened to show up when he was in the back room or the bathroom. The rational explanation felt good. It felt right. It pushed back the creeping dread that had been building in my chest since I pulled off the highway. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. "Anyone here? I don't need anything. I just wanted to check if you're okay." Still nothing. I walked toward the counter, my boots squeaking on the clean floor. The coffee maker was one of those industrial types, a big glass pot sitting on a hot plate. The coffee inside was dark, almost black, and definitely hot. I could feel the warmth radiating off it. Next to the half-full cup was an ashtray with a cigarette butt in it. The filter was still white, barely smudged, like it had been put out maybe 5 minutes ago. I leaned closer. The ember end still had a tiny wisp of smoke coming off it. "Okay," I said out loud to myself. "Okay, so someone's definitely here. They just stepped out. That's fine. That's normal." But my voice sounded uncertain, even to my own ears. I looked around the rest of the station. Behind the counter there was a doorway leading to a back room. The light I'd seen from outside was coming from there, spilling out into the main area. I could see part of a desk, some filing cabinets, the usual office stuff. The rational thing would be to call out one more time, maybe even step outside and wait by my truck until whoever ran this place came back from wherever they'd gone. The rational thing would be to respect their privacy and their property. I walked toward the back room. I don't know why. Even now, years later, I can't explain what made me do it. Curiosity, maybe. Or that same self-destructive impulse that had been guiding my decisions for as long as I could remember. The feeling that I needed to see, needed to know, even if knowing was worse than not knowing. The back room was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. A desk sat against the far wall, covered in paperwork and old invoices. A metal filing cabinet stood next to it. The drawers slightly open. A calendar hung on the wall, and that's what made me stop dead in my tracks. The calendar was turned to October 2006. Not just that. It was marked up with shifts and notes, X's through certain days, circles around others. The handwriting was neat, precise, the kind of careful lettering someone does when they're trying to keep things organized. The last entry was October 23rd, 2006. A Tuesday. Someone had written, "Early shift, 6 a.m., and nothing after that." I looked at my phone. December 2017. 11 years ago. The paperwork on the desk was from the same time period. Invoices dated 2006, delivery manifests, employee schedules. Everything stopped in late October of that year. Just stopped. But the lights were on. The coffee was hot. The cigarette was still smoking. I backed out of the office slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. This wasn't right. This wasn't possible. I needed to leave. I needed to get back in my truck and drive and forget I ever saw this place. As I turned toward the door, I noticed something I'd missed before. The shelves weren't just stocked. They were stocked with products from 2006. Old Lay's bags with logos they hadn't used in a decade. Candy bars and wrappers I vaguely remembered from high school. A rack of magazines near the counter with dates from October and November 2006. But I'd seen fresh products when I came in. I'd seen current logos, current designs. I was sure of it. I walked over to the chip rack, my hands shaking now. I picked up a bag of Doritos. The logo was old. The design was from at least 10 years ago. I dropped it and grabbed another bag. Same thing. Every product on the shelves was from 2006 or earlier. I must have been seeing things when I first came in. The weird light, the exhaustion, my brain filling in details that weren't there. That had to be it. But the coffee, the cigarette. I turned back toward the counter and froze. The styrofoam cup was gone. The ashtray was empty. The cigarette butt had vanished. I hadn't heard anything, hadn't seen anyone move, but they were definitely gone. "Hello?" My voice cracked on the word. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'm just a driver who pulled off the highway. I'm leaving now, okay? I'm leaving." Silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the building, the sound of a door closing. Soft, but distinct. I ran. I don't remember making the decision to run, but suddenly I was moving, my legs pumping, my boots sliding on the clean floor. The bell above the door jangled frantically as I burst through, out into the cold desert air. I made it to Dolly in seconds, yanked the door open, threw myself into the seat. My hands fumbled with the keys, dropping them once before I managed to get them in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I'd never heard a more beautiful sound. As I threw the truck into gear, my headlights swept across the front of the station one more time. There was someone standing in the window, just a shape, a silhouette backlit by the sickly yellow-green light. Too far away to make out features, but definitely there. Definitely watching me. The figure raised one hand, not waving, not threatening, just raised it, palm out, like it was saying goodbye, or maybe hello. I slammed my foot on the gas and Dolly lurched forward, tires squealing on the pavement. I didn't look back. I navigated the broken service road by feel and memory, found the on-ramp to the highway, and merged back into the darkness at 70 miles per hour. My heart didn't stop racing until I saw the lights of the truck stop 30 miles up the road. Bright, modern, familiar lights. I pulled in and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, just breathing, just trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I wanted to dismiss it as exhaustion, hallucination. Some kind of weird waking dream brought on by too much coffee and not enough sleep. But I could still smell that place on my clothes, the coffee and the chemical smell, and something else underneath it all. Something wrong. I thought about calling the cops, reporting it. But reporting what? An abandoned gas station that wasn't quite abandoned enough? A calendar from 2006? They'd think I was crazy. Maybe I was crazy. I finished the run to Flagstaff, delivered the pharmaceuticals on time, got my pay. Drove back through the same stretch of desert 3 days later in daylight, keeping my eyes on the road, but also glancing at the GPS, looking for that exit. I never found it. The dot wasn't there anymore on the GPS. I even pulled over and checked my route history. Nothing. Like that exit had never existed at all. But I know what I saw. I know where I went. And sometimes, late at night when I'm on a long haul through empty country, I wonder if that station is still out there. Still waiting. Still impossible. And I wonder about the person in the window, the one who raised their hand. Were they saying goodbye? Or were they just saying, see you next time? I didn't tell anyone about the Chevron station for weeks. What was there to tell? Every time I tried to piece the story together in my head, it sounded insane even to me. I'd pulled off at an abandoned gas station, seen some old products and a calendar from 2006, and got spooked. That's all it was when you stripped away the fear and the weird details. Nothing had actually happened. Except it had. Something had definitely happened, even if I couldn't put it into words that made sense. The run to Flagstaff became a regular gig. The pharmaceutical company liked my record. On time, no damage, no complaints, so they kept giving me the route. Every Tuesday and Friday, Bakersfield to Flagstaff and back. The money was good, steady, and I needed steady more than I needed variety. For the first month, I made sure to take the northern route, adding an extra hour to the drive, but avoiding that stretch of I-40 entirely. I told myself it was because the northern route had better truck stops, which was true. I didn't admit that I was scared, but routes have a way of changing. Construction, detours, weather. In early January, a rock slide closed down part of the northern highway, and my dispatcher rerouted me back to I-40. I argued with him about it for 10 minutes before I realized how that must sound. Why would a veteran driver be afraid of a particular highway? I took the route. The whole drive, I kept my eyes on the road. Didn't look at the GPS except to check my ETA. Didn't slow down when I passed the area where I thought that exit might be. I flew past at 75 miles per hour, hands tight on the wheel, telling myself I was being ridiculous. Nothing happened. No mysterious exits, no flickering signs, no abandoned stations. Just empty desert and darkness, and the white lines pulling me forward. I felt stupid for being so worked up about it. The relief lasted until my next run. It was a Friday night, mid-January. I'd started the route later than usual. Dispatcher had mixed up the pickup time, which put me on that stretch of I-40 around midnight instead of my usual 10 or 11 p.m. The desert looked different somehow. Darker. The moon was just a thin slice of light, not enough to illuminate anything, and my headlights seemed weaker than normal. I'd been driving for about 3 hours when Dolly's engine started making a weird noise. Not loud, just a soft ticking that hadn't been there before. I know every sound that truck makes, every rattle and groan, and this was new. I checked the gauges. Everything looked normal, temperature fine, oil pressure good, no warning lights. The ticking continued. Tick, 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 in rhythm with the engine. I turned down the radio to listen more carefully. It was coming from under the hood, definitely, but it didn't sound dangerous. Not yet. I could probably make it to the truck stop ahead, have a mechanic look at it in the morning. Then the temperature gauge jumped. Not gradually, it leaped from normal to the red zone in a matter of seconds. Warning lights exploded across the dashboard, and I could smell burning coolant immediately, sharp and chemical. No, 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 I muttered, easing off the gas. Come on, Dolly, not here, not now. Steam started pouring from under the hood, illuminated by my headlights, thick white clouds that made it hard to see the road. I had no choice. I pulled over onto the shoulder, threw on my hazards, and turned off the engine. The silence that followed was oppressive. No traffic, no wind, just me and the cooling ticks of a dying engine. I sat there for a minute weighing my options. I could call for a tow, but out here it would take hours for anyone to arrive. I could try to fix it myself if it was something simple, but I'd need to let the engine cool down first or risk serious burns. I grabbed my flashlight and got out to assess the damage. The hood was too hot to touch, so I walked around the truck, checking for obvious problems. Nothing. No leaks visible, no damage, just a dead truck in the middle of nowhere. That's when I noticed the glow. About a mile ahead, off to the right. The same sickly yellow-green light I'd seen 6 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. No. It couldn't be the same place. The exit had disappeared from my GPS. I'd driven this route 3 times since then and never seen anything. But there it was. The Chever sign, with half its letters lit, rotating slowly in the desert night. I stood there staring at it, my flashlight hanging uselessly at my side. This wasn't possible. I was at least 20 miles past where I thought that station had been. But maybe I'd been wrong about the location. Maybe there was more than one abandoned chevron out here. Or maybe the station had moved. The thought was ridiculous, but once it entered my mind, I couldn't shake it. The station had moved. It had been waiting for me to come back, and when I'd avoided the area, it had relocated itself into my path. Impossible, insane. And yet, I got back in the truck and tried the ignition. Nothing, not even a click. Whatever had happened to the engine was serious enough that Dolly wasn't starting without professional help. I checked my phone. No signal. Of course. The glow from the station seemed brighter now, or maybe it was just that my eyes had adjusted to the darkness. I could make out the shape of the building, the overhang over the pumps, even the outline of the Coca-Cola machine next to the door. I had two choices. Sit in my truck all night waiting for another vehicle to pass, which might not happen until morning, or walk to the station and see if they had a working phone. If someone was actually there this time, which seemed possible given the fresh coffee and cigarette I'd seen last time. The smart choice was obvious. Stay with the truck, wait for help. Don't go anywhere near that station. I started walking. I don't know why I did it. Fear makes people do stupid things sometimes, but this wasn't fear. This was something else. Compulsion, maybe. Like I'd been invited to something and it would be rude not to show up. The walk took longer than I expected. The station looked close, but distances are deceiving in the desert at night. 20 minutes of walking on the dark shoulder of the highway, my flashlight the only point of light in the world besides that station and the stars overhead. As I got closer, I could see more details. The station looked exactly the same as before. Same cracked pavement. Same intact windows. Same impossibly clean appearance for something that should have been decaying for over a decade. The service road leading to it was there, just like I remembered. I hadn't noticed a turnoff when I pulled over. It must have been hidden by the curve of the highway, but there it was, crumbling asphalt cutting off into the darkness. I walked down it slowly, my boots crunching on loose gravel. The Chever sign rotated above me, buzzing and clicking. As I passed under it, I could see that more letters had burned out since last time. Now it just said CHE, the rest of the word dark and dead. The pumps stood under their overhang like patient sentries. I stopped to look at them more closely. The price display still read $1.47. But when I looked closer, I saw that the numbers were actually moving, cycling through different prices too fast to read. $1.47, $2.103, $0.89, $3.45, all in the span of seconds, before settling back on $1.47. The Coca-Cola machine was still running, its internal light bright and somehow obscene in the darkness. I could see bottles lined up inside, frost on the glass. On impulse, I pulled the handle. It opened. A bottle dropped into the dispenser chute with a heavy clunk. I reached in and pulled it out, expecting it to be warm, a fake, some kind of prop. The glass was ice cold. Frost clung to the sides. I twisted off the cap, an old-style cap, the kind you needed a bottle opener for, except this one came off with my bare hands. The smell was wrong. Not Coca-Cola. Something chemical and bitter underneath the sweetness. I poured a little on the ground. It fizzed and steamed, like it was reacting with something in the dirt. I set the bottle down on top of the machine and backed away. The front door was exactly as I remembered it. Same stickers, same notices, same closed sign hanging at an angle. And yes, the same white paper notice. Station attendant on duty. For service after hours, please knock. I didn't knock. I pulled the door open, and the bell above it jingled. Ding-a-ling. Cheerful and wrong. The interior was different this time. Not completely different, but enough to notice. The shelves were still stocked, but the products had changed positions. Things that had been on the left were now on the right. The chip rack was where the candy had been. The magazines were on a different wall, and they were newer. The products, I mean. Some of them were actually current. Bags with 2017 logos, candy bars and wrappers I recognized from last week, mixed in with the old stuff from 2006, creating a weird timeline collision on the shelves. The coffee maker was on the counter, a full pot sitting on the burner, steam rising. But there were 2 cups this time, both half full, both with brown rings around the inside. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed in the space, bouncing off the walls in a way it shouldn't have. The room wasn't big enough for an echo. No response. I walked toward the counter, my flashlight beam cutting through the dim interior. The fluorescent lights overhead were flickering now, on off, creating a strobe effect that made everything seem to jump and stutter. The cash register was open, empty, not just empty of money, but empty of everything. No receipt paper, no coin tray, nothing. Just a hollow metal box with its drawer hanging open like a mouth. Behind the counter, the doorway to the back room. The light was still spilling out, that same yellow-green glow. I could hear something now, too. Soft, rhythmic. It took me a moment to place it. Breathing. Someone was in the back room, breathing. Slow and steady, in and out, like they were sleeping. Or waiting. Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to leave. This was wrong. This place was wrong. The products changing, the cups multiplying. The breathing from the back room, none of it made sense, and staying here any longer was dangerous. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had to see. I had to know. I walked around the counter toward the back room. The breathing got louder. In, out, in, out. Steady and mechanical, like whoever was making the sound didn't actually need air. They were just going through the motions. The back room was exactly as I'd left it 6 weeks ago. Same desk, same filing cabinet, same calendar turned to October 2006. But the calendar had new marks on it. Days that had been blank before were now X'd out, all the way through November, December, January, stopping on today's date. January 19th, 2017. Someone had been maintaining this calendar, marking off days, for 11 years. The breathing was coming from the corner of the room, where shadows pooled too thick for my flashlight to penetrate. I could see the outline of something there, a shape, person-sized but wrong somehow. The proportions were off. "Who's there?" I asked, hating how my voice shook. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I stood there, frozen, my flashlight pointed at the corner, illuminating nothing but darkness. The shape was gone, or had never been there. I couldn't tell any more. Then I heard it. From behind me, back in the main room of the station. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving from the door toward the counter. Boot heels clicking on the linoleum floor. I spun around, my flashlight beam sweeping across the doorway. Nothing. The main room was empty. But I could still hear the footsteps, getting closer. Now behind the counter, now in front of it. Now, they stopped right on the other side of the doorway. Right where I was standing. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. My flashlight illuminated the empty main room. The shelves with their impossible products. The counter with its empty register and twin coffee cups. But there was no one there. The footsteps had stopped, but I knew with absolute certainty that someone was standing inches away from me. I could feel them. The displacement of air, the sense of a presence, a consciousness focused entirely on me. My flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. Then died completely, plunging me into darkness broken only by the yellow-green glow from behind me and the strobing fluorescence in the main room. In that stuttering, unreliable light, I saw something that made my blood freeze. On the counter, next to the two half-full coffee cups, there was now a third cup. This one was empty except for a folded piece of paper inside it. I don't remember walking over to it, but suddenly the cup was in my hand, and I was unfolding the paper with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. The note was written in that same neat, precise handwriting from the calendar. It said, "We've been expecting you, Cole. The station remembers everyone who visits, everyone who leaves, and everyone who comes back. Your truck will be fine, but you should probably go now. It's almost time for the shift change." My name. It knew my name. I'd never told anyone my name here. Hell, I'd never even spoken to anyone. The fluorescent lights stopped flickering. The whole station went dark except for that yellow-green glow from the back room, and in that glow, I saw shadows moving. Lots of them. Human-shaped, but wrong, just like the thing in the corner had been wrong. They were coming toward me. I ran. Dropped the cup, dropped the note, just turned and ran for the door. The bell jangled frantically as I burst through into the cold desert air. I didn't stop running until I was back on the highway, my lungs burning, my legs threatening to give out. When I finally looked back, the station was dark. Completely dark. No lights, no glow, no Chevier sign rotating in the night. Just a black shape against the slightly less black desert, indistinguishable from any other abandoned building. I walked back to my truck in a daze. The mile-long walk felt like it took hours. When I finally reached Dolly, I tried the ignition without much hope. She started immediately. No warning lights, no overheating, no weird ticking. The temperature gauge sat perfectly in the middle of the normal range. It was like nothing had ever been wrong. I didn't question it. I just drove. Put that station and that impossible note and those moving shadows as far behind me as I could. I drove all the way to Flagstaff without stopping, delivered my load, and headed straight back to Bakersfield without sleeping. The next day, I told my dispatcher I was done with the Flagstaff route. He tried to change my mind. Good pay, regular schedule. But I held firm. I told him I had family stuff to deal with, which was a lie. My family had stopped calling years ago. He reassigned me to runs up the coast. I took a pay cut, but I didn't care. I wasn't going back to that desert, wasn't going back to I-40, wasn't going anywhere near that station ever again. That was 6 months ago. Last week, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just my name and the address of the apartment I barely used between runs. Inside was a single item, a photograph. It showed the Chevron station taken from the highway at night. The Chevier sign was lit up and rotating. Through the windows I could see the interior. The shelves, the counter, the coffee maker. And standing behind the counter, looking directly at the camera, was me. Or someone who looked exactly like me. Wearing the same clothes I'd worn that night, holding that same flashlight. But I'd never been behind the counter. I'd never let anyone take my picture. On the back of the photo, in that neat, precise handwriting. "See you next time, Cole. The station never forgets." I don't drive anymore. I quit the trucking company, sold Dolly to another driver who said he needed a good rig for long desert runs. I tried to warn him, tried to tell him to avoid I-40, but he just laughed and said the desert was the best place to drive. Empty, peaceful, no complications. I saw him 3 weeks ago. He looked thin, haunted, like he wasn't sleeping. When I asked him about the routes, he got quiet. Then he said, "You ever stop at a station that shouldn't exist?" I didn't answer. I just walked away. Because I know the truth now. The station doesn't exist for everyone. It chooses, it picks certain drivers, certain people, and it brings them in. And once you've been inside, once you've seen it, you're marked. You belong to it in some way. I still get packages sometimes. Always photographs. Different angles of the station. Different times of night. And in every single one, somewhere in the frame, I can see myself. Or someone who looks like me. Watching. Waiting. Behind the counter where I never stood. I moved to Portland after I quit trucking. Figured the rain and the city noise would help me forget about the desert and that station. Found a job in a warehouse, loading and unloading trucks for other guys who still spent their lives on the road. The pay was garbage compared to what I'd been making, but it was steady and I slept in the same bed every night. For a while, it worked. The nightmares faded. I stopped checking my mail every day, dreading another photograph. Weeks went by without thinking about yellow-green lights or impossible calendars or coffee cups that multiplied when I wasn't looking. Then the radio started acting up. It was subtle at first. I'd be at work, loading pallets, and the warehouse radio would cut out for a second. Static would fill the space just for a moment, before the music came back. Nobody else seemed to notice. I told myself it was just a bad antenna, interference from the forklifts. But the static started happening more often. And sometimes, buried in the white noise, I'd hear something. Not words exactly, more like the shape of words, the echo of a voice trying to push through from somewhere far away. I started wearing earbuds to drown it out. Loud music, podcasts, anything to fill my head with sound that wasn't that static. My coworkers thought I was antisocial. I didn't care. Better antisocial than crazy. 3 months after moving to Portland, I met someone. Her name was Rachel, and she worked at the coffee shop next to the warehouse. She had red hair and freckles and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. We started talking during my breaks, then having lunch together, then actual dates. I didn't tell her about the station. What would I say? I saw an impossible abandoned gas station that seemed to follow me, and now I get mysterious photographs of myself in places I've never been. She'd have run, and I wouldn't have blamed her. Things were good for about 6 weeks. Rachel and I fell into an easy rhythm. Dinners, movies, long walks in the rain that she loved and I tolerated. She was talking about me meeting her parents. I was thinking about the future in a way I hadn't since Carla. Then I saw the Chevron sign. We were driving back from dinner, taking a route through northeast Portland I'd never been on before. Rachel was just telling me about her sister's wedding plans, laughing about the bridesmaid dress drama. I was half listening, comfortable and happy, when I saw it through the passenger window. A gas station, old-style 1960s design, with an overhang over the pumps, and above it a rotating sign, Chever, with half the letters dark. "Stop the car," I said, my voice coming out strangled. "What? Cole, what's wrong?" "Stop the fucking car!" She pulled over, scared by the tone of my voice. I was already opening the door before we'd fully stopped, stumbling out onto the wet sidewalk. I turned back to look at the station. It was a modern 76 station. Bright lights, digital price displays, a mini-mart that was definitely built within the last 10 years. No rotating sign, no yellow-green glow, just a normal gas station in a normal Portland neighborhood. "Cole?" Rachel was out of the car now, her hand on my arm. "Baby, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't answer. I just stood there staring at the 76 station, my heart hammering in my chest. I'd seen it. I'd seen the Chevron sign clear as day, but it was gone now, replaced by something completely different. "I'm sorry," I finally managed. "I thought I saw—" "I'm sorry, I'm fine, let's go." But I wasn't fine. Rachel could tell I wasn't fine. She drove us back to my apartment in silence, and when she tried to come inside, I told her I needed to be alone. The hurt in her eyes almost made me change my mind, but I couldn't deal with her questions right now. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with every light in the apartment on, staring at my phone. I wanted to call someone, talk to someone who might understand. But who? Everyone I knew from trucking was still on the road, and I'd burned most of those bridges when I quit without explanation. Around 3 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring through to voicemail, then immediately regretted it. I played the message back. Static, just static. But underneath it, barely audible, that voice again. The one from the warehouse radio. This time I could make out a few words. Coal, station, waiting. I deleted the voicemail with shaking hands. Then I blocked the number. Then I turned off my phone entirely. The next few weeks were a nightmare of paranoia and exhaustion. I started seeing the station everywhere, reflections in windows, billboards that seemed to flicker into that familiar shape for just a second, even cloud formations that looked too much like an overhang over gas pumps. Rachel broke up with me. I'd been distant, jumpy, unwilling to explain what was wrong. She said she cared about me, but she couldn't be with someone who wouldn't let her in. I wanted to tell her the truth, wanted to explain, but the words wouldn't come. How do you explain something you don't understand yourself? Work got harder. The static on the warehouse radio was constant now, and sometimes I'd swear I could hear my name mixed in with it. My coworkers started avoiding me. I'd caught myself talking back to the static once, asking it what it wanted, and someone had seen. 4 months after moving to Portland, I made a decision. I was going to go back to the desert, back to that stretch of I-40. I was going to find that station, if it even existed anymore, and I was going to get answers. Or I was going to prove to myself that it had all been hallucinations brought on by stress and isolation. Either way, I needed this to end. I rented a car, I wasn't about to buy another truck, and headed south. The drive took 2 days. I could have done it in less, but I kept stopping, kept second-guessing myself. What if I found the station? What if I didn't? I timed my arrival for midnight, same as the first time I'd seen it. Pulled onto I-40 East out of Bakersfield and drove into the familiar darkness. The desert looked the same. Empty. Vast. Indifferent to whatever human drama was playing out on its roads. I'd been driving for about 2 hours when I felt something change. The air in the car got colder. The radio, which I'd kept off, started emitting soft static. And in the distance I saw a glow. Yellow-green. Sickly. Familiar. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. This was it. This was what I'd come for. But now that I was here, terror seized me. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to drive away, to forget this whole insane quest. I kept driving forward. The exit appeared, exactly where it had been before. No sign, just a ramp cutting off into the darkness. I took it without hesitating because if I hesitated, I'd lose my nerve entirely. The service road was worse than I remembered. The pavement had deteriorated, or maybe I just hadn't noticed how bad it was before. The car bounced and scraped, and I prayed I wouldn't blow a tire out here. The station materialized out of the darkness like something from a dream, or a nightmare. Same layout, same pumps, same Chever sign rotating overhead. But it looked older now, more decayed. The windows weren't clean anymore. They were covered in dust and grime. The overhang had holes in it, exposing rusted metal beams. This was what the station should have looked like all along. Abandoned, forgotten, dead. I parked in front of the building and sat there, engine running, debating whether to actually get out. The Coca-Cola machine was dark now, its light burned out. The price display on the pumps showed nothing but zeros. The front door was hanging open, moving slightly in a wind I couldn't feel. I turned off the engine and got out. The silence was total, oppressive. No insects, no wind, no ambient sound of any kind. just my breathing and the crunch of my footsteps on the broken pavement. The bell above the door was gone, so there was no cheerful jingle when I stepped inside. The interior was dark except for my flashlight beam, and what it revealed made my stomach turn. The shelves were still stocked, but the products had rotted. Chip bags bloated with decay, candy bars melted into puddles of waxy chocolate, bread covered in thick black mold. The smell was overwhelming, sweetness and rot and that chemical smell underneath it all. The counter was covered in dust an inch thick. The coffee maker was there, but the pot was shattered. Brown liquid dried into a sticky residue across the surface, and there were dozens of cups now. Not 2 or 3, but dozens, all arranged in neat rows, all with that brown ring around the inside. I walked towards the back room, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The door was open. The office inside looked like a bomb had gone off. Papers everywhere, filing cabinet drawers pulled out and dumped, the desk overturned. But the calendar was still on the wall, still turned to October 2006. Except now, the entire page was covered in X's. Not just marked days, but X's over every single space, overlapping each other, the paper almost black with ink. And in the corner, where I'd heard breathing before, there was a shape. Definitely a shape this time. Solid and real. It looked like a person curled into a fetal position, but the proportions were all wrong. The arms too long, the legs bent at angles that shouldn't be possible. The shape moved, not much, just a small shift, like someone adjusting in their sleep. But it was enough to make me stumble backward, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly across the walls. "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "What do you want?" The shape unfolded. Slowly, impossibly, it stood up. In the narrow beam of my flashlight, I couldn't see all of it at once. Just pieces. A hand with fingers that had too many joints. A shoulder that curved wrong. A head that tilted at an angle no neck should allow. It moved toward me, not walking. There were no footsteps. It just moved, glided, like it wasn't quite touching the ground. I turned and ran. Through the office into the main room, heading for the door. Behind me, I could hear something. Not footsteps, not breathing, just a sound like fabric tearing, over and over, rhythmic and awful. I made it outside and sprinted for the car. Got inside, locked the doors, like that would help, and fumbled with the keys. The engine turned over once, twice, then caught. I threw the car into reverse and punched the gas. As I backed away from the station, my headlights swept across the front windows. Every window was filled with faces. Not the thing from the office. These were human faces, or close to human. Men and women and some that could have been either, all pressed against the glass, all staring at me with empty eyes. And in the middle of them, standing behind the counter like he was just another customer, was me. The other Cole, the one from the photographs. He raised one hand and waved, slow and deliberate. I screamed, actually screamed, something I hadn't done since I was a child. I spun the car around and drove, bouncing over the broken service road, not caring if I destroyed the undercarriage. I had to get away, had to get back to the highway, back to reality, back to anywhere that wasn't here. I made it to the highway and didn't stop driving until the sun came up. I was somewhere in New Mexico by then, in a truck stop parking lot, surrounded by other drivers starting their morning runs. Normal people doing normal jobs in the normal world. I sat there for an hour, just breathing, trying to process what I'd seen. The thing in the corner, the faces in the windows, the other me standing behind the counter. My phone rang. I turned it back on when I stopped, some automatic gesture toward normalcy. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Static. Then, clear as day, my own voice. You shouldn't have come back, Cole. Now you're part of it, part of us. The station never forgets, and it never lets go. The line went dead. I threw the phone out the window, watched it shatter on the pavement. Then I got back in the car and drove to Portland without stopping except for gas. I'm writing this now because I need to get it out. Need someone to know what happened before it's too late. The static never stops anymore. It's everywhere. Radios, TVs, even the white noise of rain on my windows. And sometimes I see them, the faces from the station, reflected in dark glass or caught in the corner of my vision. They're waiting for me, I know they are. Waiting for me to come back, or waiting for the right moment to bring me back. Last night, I woke up to find a map on my kitchen table. I live alone. I lock my doors. But there it was. A road map of the southwestern United States with a red X marking a spot on I-40. The same spot. The same impossible exit. And written in the margin in that neat, precise handwriting, "Come home, Cole. Your shift starts soon." I'm not going. I won't. I'll move again, change my name, disappear into some city where the station can't find me. But I know the truth. I've known it since that first night when I pulled off the highway and walked through that door. The station doesn't forget, and it never lets go. 3 weeks after I found the map on my kitchen table, I stopped sleeping in my apartment. The walls felt too thin, like something could push through them if it wanted to. The shadows in the corners moved when I wasn't looking directly at them. And every night, at exactly 11:43 p.m., the same time I'd first pulled into that station, I'd hear the bell, the one from above the door. Ding-a-ling, cheerful and wrong. I started staying in motels, different ones each night, paying cash so there was no record. It didn't matter, the bell followed me. So did the maps. I'd wake up to find them on the nightstand on the bathroom counter, once even tucked under my pillow, all marking the same spot, all with the same message in that precise handwriting. "Come home, Cole. Your shift starts soon." Work fired me. I'd been showing up late, looking disheveled, talking to myself. The warehouse manager pulled me aside and said they were concerned about my mental health, suggested I take some time off, get help. I told him to fuck off and walked out. Rachel called once. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail saying she was worried about me, that people had seen me around town looking rough, talking to people who weren't there. She said if I needed someone to talk to, she was still willing to listen. I deleted it without responding. How could I explain? How could I tell her that I was being hunted by an impossible gas station, that there was another version of me standing behind a counter in the desert, waiting for me to take his place? Money ran out faster than I expected. Motels every night burned through my savings, and I wasn't working anymore. I sold what I could, my furniture, my TV, anything I didn't absolutely need. I was down to a backpack with a few clothes, my wallet, and a desperate growing need to just give in. Because that's what the station wanted. I understood that now. It wanted me to come back. Not by force. It could have taken me any time it wanted, but by choice. I had to walk through that door willingly. I had to choose to stay, and God help me, I was starting to consider it. The hallucinations, if that's what they were, got worse. I'd see the station everywhere now, not just fleeting glimpses, but solid, real, standing where other buildings should be. I'd walk past a 7-Eleven and suddenly it would be the Chevron, complete with the Chevre sign and the yellow-green glow. I'd blink and it would be a 7-Eleven again. Other people started showing up in my visions. People I didn't recognize, wearing clothes from different decades. A woman in a 1970s waitress uniform. A man in a suit that looked like it came from the 1950s. a teenager in grunge fashion from the 90s. They'd be standing at the pumps, or walking through the aisles, or sitting at a desk in the back office. All of them had the same empty eyes, the same slow, mechanical movements, like they were going through the motions of being human without actually being human anymore. One of them looked like me, not the other Cole I'd seen behind the counter. A different version. Older, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. He was always doing the same thing, standing by the coffee maker, pouring a cup that was already full, the liquid spilling over the sides endlessly. I knew what it meant. I knew what I was seeing. Different versions of myself, or the same version at different times, all trapped in that station, all going through the same routines over and over, all waiting for me to join them. 4 months after the map appeared on my kitchen table, I ran out of money entirely. No more motels. I slept in parks, in doorways, anywhere I could find. Portland's homeless population absorbed me without question. Just another broken person on the streets, talking to himself, seeing things that weren't there. I tried to get help once. Walked into a mental health clinic and told them I needed to talk to someone. The intake person listened to my story, carefully edited, no mention of impossible gas stations or duplicate selves, and put me on a waiting list. 3 months, they said. 3 months before they could see me. I didn't have 3 months. The dreams started coming every time I closed my eyes now. Always the same. I'm driving Dolly down I-40. The engine starts making that ticking sound. The temperature gauge jumps to red. I pull over, and there's the station, glowing in the darkness. I walk down the service road. The bell jingles. Someone behind the counter says, "Welcome back, Cole." And I wake up screaming. 5 months in, I stopped fighting it. The exhaustion was total, crushing. I couldn't remember what it felt like to be sane, to live a normal life. The station had taken everything. My job, my home, my relationship, my fucking mind. I had nothing left except the knowledge that somewhere out in the desert, there was a place waiting for me. I stole a car. I'm not proud of it, but I was past the point of caring about things like law and morality. It was an old Honda, easy to hotwire, and I took it from a parking garage downtown. Pointed it south and started driving. The entire trip felt like a dream. I'd go in and out of awareness, sometimes finding myself hundreds of miles further along than I remembered, sometimes losing hours with no idea where they'd gone. The radio played static the whole way, occasionally resolving into music from different decades. Glenn Miller, Elvis, Nirvana, songs that shouldn't all be on the same station. And underneath it all, that voice. My voice. Almost home, Cole. Almost time. I reached the stretch of I-40 just after midnight. Of course, everything always happened at midnight out here, like the universe was following some script I'd never been allowed to read. I didn't have to look for the exit. I knew exactly where it was. My hands turned the wheel automatically and the car rolled down the service road like it was on rails, like I'd done this 1,000 times before. The station looked different this time, better. The decay I'd seen on my last visit was gone. The windows were clean again. The overhang was intact. The Chever sign rotated smoothly overhead, all the letters lit up and bright. Even the Coca-Cola machine was glowing, promising cold refreshment. It looked welcoming, like home. I parked and got out. The air was warm, comfortable. I could smell coffee and something baking. Fresh bread, maybe. Through the windows, I could see the interior lit up and clean. Shelves fully stocked with products that looked current and fresh. The door was unlocked. The bell jingled as I pushed through. Ding-a-ling. And this time it didn't sound wrong. It sounded right. It sounded like a greeting. The interior was exactly as I remembered from my first visit. Clean floors, organized shelves, coffee maker on the counter with a full pot. 2 cups sitting next to it, both empty, waiting to be filled. "Hello, Cole." I turned. Behind the counter stood the other me, the one from the photographs. He looked exactly like I'd looked 6 months ago, before the fear and the sleeplessness and the street living had worn me down. Healthy, rested, whole. "I've been waiting," he said. His voice was my voice, but steadier, calmer. "We all have." "We?" He gestured toward the back room. I walked over, knowing what I'd find, but needing to see it anyway. The office was full of people. Dozens of them crowded into a space that should only hold 3 or 4. All of them looked vaguely familiar, like family members I'd never met. Different ages, different decades of fashion, but all with the same basic features. The same eyes. The same posture. They were all me, or versions of me, or the same me at different points in some infinite timeline. "Every driver who stops here," the other Cole explained, "becomes part of the station. You felt it, didn't you? When you first walked in, the pull, the connection. This place needs people to keep running, and it chooses carefully." "I don't understand." "You don't have to. You just have to choose. You can leave if you want. Walk out that door, get back in your stolen car, drive away. The station will let you go." "Will it?" He smiled. "For a while. But you'll come back. They always come back. The station is patient. It can wait years, decades even. But everyone it chooses eventually returns. Because out there," he gestured toward the windows, toward the darkness beyond, "what do you have? No job, no home, no one who cares if you live or die. At least here you have a purpose. Here you belong." I looked at the crowd of me's in the back room. They weren't moving, weren't speaking, just standing there watching, waiting for my decision. What happens if I stay? You take a shift, man the counter, stock the shelves, help the travelers who stop by, keep the station running. It's easy work, peaceful, and you'll never be alone. We're all here together. Forever? Time doesn't work the same way here. It might feel like forever. It might feel like a day. Does it matter? Out there, time is crushing you, grinding you down year by year. Here, time just is. I walked to the counter and looked at the 2 empty cups. These are for us, if you want them to be. I picked up one of the cups. It was warm, like it had just been holding coffee moments ago. I could see a faint brown ring around the inside. Behind me, I heard the bell jingle. I turned to see a truck pulling up outside. A big rig, modern, headlights cutting through the desert night. A driver got out, a woman with short hair and tired eyes. She looked at the station with the same mixture of confusion and curiosity I must have shown on my first visit. "Someone should help her," the other Cole said. "Someone should make sure she feels welcome." I watched the woman approach the door. She hesitated, hand on the handle, clearly debating whether to come in. I could see the exhaustion on her face, the way her shoulders slumped. She looked like I felt, lost, alone, desperate for anything that felt like connection. The bell jingled as she pushed through. "Hello?" she called out. "Anyone here?" I looked at the other Cole. He was smiling, patient, waiting for me to make my choice. Behind him, the crowd of me's watched with empty eyes. Not threatening, not demanding, just waiting. I could walk away. I could try to explain to this woman that she shouldn't be here, that this place was wrong, that she needed to leave immediately. I could get back in the stolen car and drive off into the darkness, back to the life I'd been living, back to the streets and the hunger and the endless, crushing loneliness. Or I could stay. I could fill those cups with coffee, take my shift behind the counter, become part of something that would never leave me, never abandon me, never forget me. I set down the cup and walked toward the woman. She looked up as I approached, relief flooding her face. Oh, thank God. I thought this place was abandoned. My truck's overheating and I really need... Coffee? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. We have fresh coffee, and the bathroom's in the back if you need it. She smiled, tired and grateful. That would be amazing. Thank you so much. I walked behind the counter and picked up the coffee pot. It was full and hot, steam rising from the dark liquid inside. The other Cole handed me a cup, not one of the two that had been waiting, but a fresh one from a stack I hadn't noticed before. I poured the coffee and handed it to the woman. She wrapped her hands around it, absorbing the warmth. "You're a lifesaver," she said. "How much do I owe you?" "On the house," I heard myself say. "First cup's always free." She smiled and headed towards the bathroom in the back. I watched her go, then looked down at the cup I was still holding. The empty cup, the one that had been waiting for me. The other, Cole, appeared at my shoulder. "Ready?" I filled the cup with coffee. Took a sip. It was bitter and sweet and tasted like surrender. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." The station breathed around me. I could feel it now, the way it expanded and contracted like a living thing. The fluorescent lights flickered once, and when they steadied, everything looked different. Clearer, more real. Like I'd been seeing the world through a dirty window my entire life, and someone had just cleaned the glass. The woman came back from the bathroom, still holding her coffee. "Thank you again. I should probably check on my truck." "It'll be fine," I told her. "Trust me, these things have a way of working themselves out." She gave me an odd look, but nodded and headed back outside. Through the window, I watched her try her truck. It started immediately, no hesitation. She looked confused for a moment, then shrugged and climbed into the cab. Within minutes, she was back on the highway, taillights disappearing into the darkness. "First shift complete," the other Cole said. "See? Easy." I should have felt something. Horror, maybe. Regret. The sinking realization that I'd just made a terrible mistake. But I felt nothing except a strange, peaceful calm. Like I'd been carrying a weight my entire life and had finally set it down. "What now?" I asked. "Now we wait for the next traveler, and the next, and the next. The desert is long and the road is lonely. They'll come. They always come." I looked at the calendar in the back office. It was still turned to October 2006, but as I watched, the page flipped. November, December. The years cycled past faster and faster until they blurred together into a single, endless present. Time doesn't work the same way here. The other Cole had been right about that. I don't know how long I've been at the station. Could be days. Could be years. The travelers come and go. Some stay for just a cup of coffee. Others browse the shelves. A few try to talk to us. We smile and help and watch them leave, back to their lives, back to the world that exists outside this impossible place. Occasionally, someone stays. We can always tell who will stay. They have the same look I must have had, lost, desperate, willing to trade anything for a moment of peace. We welcome them. We pour them coffee. We show them the calendar in the back office and the crowd of previous attendants who all look a little too similar. Some of them run. Some of them join us. It doesn't matter either way. The station is patient. I saw my reflection in the windows last night. I looked younger. The lines around my eyes had faded. The gray in my hair was gone. I looked like I did 10 years ago, before the marriage failed, before I spent 15 years driving alone through the darkness. The other Cole, the original other Cole, the one who was here when I arrived, is gone now. He left his shift the day I took mine. I didn't see him go. One moment he was there, showing me how to work the register, and the next moment there was just empty space where he'd been standing. I wonder if he's out there somewhere, living a life free from the station. Or if he's in the back office with all the others, frozen in that moment of choice, existing in all times and no time at once. I wonder if it matters. A truck pulls up outside. It's 11:43 p.m. It's always 11:43 p.m. The driver gets out, a young guy with nervous eyes. He looks at the station the way they all do. Confused, curious, a little bit hopeful. I check the coffee pot. Still full, still hot, always full, always hot. The bell jingles. "Hello?" the driver calls. "Anyone here?" I step into view, wearing the same smile the other Cole wore when he greeted me. "Welcome to the station. Can I help you find something?" The young man looks relieved. "My engine's making a weird noise. I was hoping—" "Come on in," I say. "We have fresh coffee, and whatever your truck needs, I'm sure it'll work itself out." He hesitates at the threshold. Exactly like I did. Exactly like they all do. Deciding whether to trust this impossible place or to run back to the safety of the darkness outside. "It's okay," I tell him, and I mean it, because it is okay. Everything is okay here. You're safe here. You're home. He takes a step forward. The bell jingles, and the station breathes, patient and eternal, waiting for the next traveler, and the next and the next, forever and ever, here at the station that never closes, on the road that never ends, in the desert that holds us all. Welcome home, Cole. Your shift never ends. But that's okay. Neither does mine. My name's Wyatt. Wyatt Briggs. Been hauling freight for nearly 12 years now, mostly out of Denver. I run a tight operation, newer Kenworth, good maintenance schedule, routes planned down to the minute. I'm the kind of driver who doesn't leave things to chance. Check the weather 3 times before a run. Know every rest stop between here and anywhere. Keep a logbook so detailed my dispatcher calls it obsessive. That's why what happened on Route 287 doesn't make any goddamn sense. It was early November, one of those runs where winter's threatening but hasn't quite arrived yet. I was hauling electronics from Denver down to Amarillo. Laptops, tablets, the kind of cargo that makes you nervous every time you hit a pothole. The manifest said I had 48 hours to make the delivery, which was generous. Should have been a milk run. I left Denver around noon on a Tuesday. The sky was that pale gray color it gets before snow, and the forecast kept changing its mind about whether we'd get hit. I decided to risk it. The southern route usually stays clear longer, and I figured I could outrun anything coming from the north. First 5 hours were perfect. I made good time through Colorado Springs, stopped for fuel and a burger in Pueblo, got back on the road by 6. The sun was setting behind me, turning the whole sky orange and purple like a bruise healing in reverse. Temperature was dropping fast, though. By the time I crossed into New Mexico, it was down to 32 degrees. Around 9 p.m., I started seeing the clouds. They were coming from the west, not the north, like the forecast had said. Big, dark, pregnant with snow. I'd seen enough mountain storms to know what was coming. I pulled over and checked my phone. The weather app had just updated. Winter storm warning. Expected snowfall, 8 to 12 inches. Expected start time, 10 p.m. Shit, I muttered, doing the math in my head. I was still 3 hours from Amarillo. If I pushed it, I might make it before the worst hit. But if I didn't, I'd be stuck on the highway in a blizzard with 40 grand worth of electronics and no way to keep them safe. The smart move would have been to find a motel, wait it out. But I'd already burned half my delivery window, and the client was one of those big box stores that penalized late deliveries. I couldn't afford the hit to my rating. I got back on the road and drove faster than I should have. 65, then 70, watching the clouds roll in from the west like an invading army. The first flakes started falling around 9:45. Just a few at first, caught in my headlights like moths. Then more, then a lot more. By 10:15, I was in whiteout conditions. Couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead, the road disappearing into a wall of white. The highway was empty. Anyone with sense had already found shelter. I slowed to 40, then 30, my hands cramping from gripping the wheel so hard. The heater in the cab was running full blast, but I could still feel the cold seeping in around the doors. The windshield wipers were struggling, ice building up on the blades. Every few minutes I had to lean forward and scrape frost off the inside of the glass. I should have stopped, I know that, but there was nowhere to stop. The highway stretched on forever. No exits, no rest areas, just endless white darkness and the occasional reflective mile marker appearing and disappearing in the snow. Then, around 10:40, I saw the sign. It was barely visible through the storm, a green rectangle that materialized out of the snow like a ghost. Exit 47, services, and below it, smaller. Gas food lodging. I'd driven this route maybe 30 times over the years. I didn't remember an exit 47, but in a blizzard, with visibility near zero and my nerves shot from an hour of white-knuckle driving, I wasn't about to question it. Services meant shelter. Maybe a motel, maybe just a gas station with a warm bathroom and a chance to wait out the worst of the storm. I took the exit. The off-ramp curved away from the highway, descending into darkness. The snow seemed heavier here, or maybe it was just that I was going slower. My headlights cut through the white, illuminating nothing but more snow and the faint outline of a 2-lane road. I followed it for maybe half a mile, seeing nothing, starting to wonder if I'd made a mistake. Then the road opened up into what looked like a service area. I could make out shapes through the snow, a building, definitely, and what might have been fuel pumps under some kind of overhang. I pulled into the lot slowly, my tires crunching on fresh snow that was already 3 or 4 inches deep. The building resolved into focus as I got closer. It was an old-style gas station, probably from the 70s or 80s. Single story, flat roof, big plate glass windows across the front. The kind of place you'd see in old photographs of Route 66. There was a sign above the pumps, but the snow was too thick to read it. The lights were on, though. I could see a dim glow through the windows, warm and inviting after the cold hell of the highway. I parked as close to the building as I could and sat there for a minute, letting my heart rate come down. My hands were shaking. I'd been driving in that storm for over an hour, and it had taken more out of me than I'd realized. The sensible thing would be to call the dispatcher, let him know where I was, that I'd be delayed. I pulled out my phone. No signal, not even one bar. Not surprising in a storm like this, but it made me feel isolated in a way I didn't like. I looked at the building again. The lights were definitely on. I could see shelves inside, though I couldn't make out any details. Someone was probably in there, warm and dry, maybe with a phone I could use, or at least information about when the storm might pass. I grabbed my heavy coat from the sleeper cab and stepped out into the storm. The cold hit me like a physical force. The wind had picked up, driving snow into my face hard enough to sting. I put my head down and trudged toward the building, each step sinking into snow that was now ankle-deep. The wind made a sound out here, not howling exactly, more like breathing, deep and rhythmic, in and out, like the storm itself was alive. I shook off the thought and kept walking. The pumps were old. I could see that even through the snow. the kind with mechanical number wheels instead of digital displays. The price showed $1.89 per gallon, which meant they hadn't been updated in at least 15 years. Maybe longer, but the lights were on. That meant someone was here operating this place, even if they weren't exactly current on their pricing. I reached the door and grabbed the handle. It was ice cold, so cold it burned my palm even through my glove. I pulled. The door opened easily, and I stumbled inside, snow following me in a blast of wind. I pushed the door closed behind me, and suddenly the sound of the storm was muffled, distant. The warmth hit me immediately. Not just warmth, heat. The kind of oppressive heat that makes you sweat even when you've just come in from the cold. I unzipped my coat, looking around. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from a place this old. Linoleum floors, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, shelves lined with basic supplies. Chips, candy, motor oil, antifreeze. A coffee maker sat on a counter near the register, a full pot sitting on the burner. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded strange in the space, flat and absorbed. No answer. I walked deeper into the store, my boots leaving wet tracks on the floor. The shelves were stocked, but everything looked old. Not just old, ancient. Candy bars and wrappers I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Soda bottles with logos from the 80s. A magazine rack with yellowed covers showing dates from 1987. But the coffee was fresh. I could smell it, and the lights were on, and the heat was running. "Hello?" I tried again. "Anyone here? I just need to use a phone, maybe wait out the storm?" Still nothing. Behind the counter, I could see a doorway leading to what looked like a back room. A faint light was coming from there, different from the fluorescent overhead lights. Softer, yellower. I was about to walk around the counter to check when I noticed something that made me stop. The windows. When I'd driven up, I'd seen the lights through the windows, the warm glow that had drawn me in. But now, standing inside looking out, I couldn't see anything. Not the storm, not my truck, not even the faint outline of the pumps. Just darkness. Complete, total darkness. Like someone had painted the windows black. I walked over to the nearest window and pressed my face close to the glass. Nothing. I couldn't even see the reflection of the interior lights. It was like looking into a void. "That's weird," I said out loud, my breath fogging the glass. Behind me, I heard something. A soft sound, like a door creaking open. I spun around. The back room door was still closed. The store was empty. But I'd definitely heard something. "Look, I don't mean to intrude," I called out, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. "I'm just a driver who pulled off in the storm. If someone's here, I'd really appreciate some help." The fluorescent lights flickered, just once, but it was enough to make my heart jump. I walked toward the counter, thinking maybe there was a bell I could ring, or a phone I could pick up. That's when I saw the logbook. It was sitting next to the register, open to a page with handwritten entries. I leaned over to look at it. It appeared to be some kind of visitor log, listing people who'd stopped at the station. Names, dates, times. The entries were all old. I scanned down the page. March 14th, 1987. June 3rd, 1987. October 29th, 1987. All from the same year. All written in the same neat, careful handwriting. Then, at the bottom of the page, one more entry. Different handwriting, shakier. November 8th, 2017. 10:47 p.m. The date was today. The time was 3 minutes ago. I hadn't written that. I hadn't even touched the book. I backed away from the counter, my pulse racing. This was wrong. Everything about this place was wrong. The old products, the windows showing nothing, the impossible logbook entry. I needed to leave. Now. I turned towards the door and froze. Standing between me and the exit was a figure. Just a silhouette, backlit by the fluorescent lights. I couldn't make out features, couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. Just a shape, person-sized, standing completely still. Jesus, I gasped, stumbling backward. You scared the hell out of me. I didn't hear you come in. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, silent and motionless. I'm Wyatt, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My truck's outside, just waiting out the storm. Is this your place? Nothing. The figure remained perfectly still. And now that my eyes were adjusting, I realized something was wrong with the proportions. The arms were too long, the head tilted at an angle that wasn't quite right. Okay, I said, my mouth dry. I'm gonna go check on my truck. I started to edge around the figure, giving it a wide berth. It didn't move, didn't turn to follow me, just stood there like a mannequin. I reached the door and grabbed the handle. The metal was still ice cold. I pulled. The door didn't budge. I pulled harder. Nothing. It was like it was welded shut. Hey, I said, turning back to the figure. The door's stuck. Can you... The figure was gone. I was alone in the store again. Just me and the buzzing fluorescent lights and the impossible heat and the windows that showed nothing but darkness. I pulled at the door again, putting my whole weight into it. It wouldn't move. Not stuck. Locked. Locked from the outside, which didn't make any sense because I'd just come through it. I ran to the windows looking for another exit. Through the glass, I could see nothing. Not the storm, not my truck, just that same absolute darkness. I pounded on the glass. Hey, anyone out there? I'm stuck in here. Can anyone hear me? No response. The glass didn't even seem to transmit the sound. It was like hitting a wall. Behind me, I heard that sound again. The door creaking. I turned slowly. The back room door was open now, just a crack, that yellow light spilling out. And from inside I could hear something. Soft, rhythmic. The sound of a fuel pump running. Click, 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 click. Over and over, but slower than it should be, like a heartbeat. I stood there in the middle of the store, trapped between the locked exit and the open back room, while outside the windows showed nothing but darkness, and inside the fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered and the coffee maker dripped, and somewhere in the back a pump clicked like a dying heart. I'd made a terrible mistake taking that exit, and I was starting to think I might never make it back to the highway. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in the middle of that impossible store. Could have been seconds. Could have been minutes. Time felt wrong, stretched out and compressed at the same time, like a recording being played at the wrong speed. The sound from the back room continued. Click, 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 click. That mechanical rhythm that was almost but not quite like a heartbeat. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to stay away from that door, to not go into that back room under any circumstances. But what choice did I have? The front door was locked, the windows showed nothing, and I needed to find another way out. I walked toward the counter, my footsteps echoing in the strange acoustics of the space. The logbook was still there, still open to that page with my date and time written in handwriting that wasn't mine. On impulse, I grabbed a pen from next to the register and wrote something in the margin of the page. Wyatt Briggs. If you find this, I'm trapped. Call for help. The words looked stupid as soon as I'd written them. Who was going to find this? But it made me feel slightly better, like I was taking some kind of action instead of just being a victim. I set down the pen and looked at the back room door. It was still open, that same crack, yellow light spilling out. The clicking sound continued steady and relentless. "Hello?" I called out. "Is someone back there? I need help." No answer, just the clicking. I reached out and pushed the door open wider. The back room was small, maybe 10 feet by 12. It looked like an office combined with a storage area. A desk sat against one wall, covered in papers and what looked like old invoices. Metal shelving lined the other walls, stocked with supplies, motor oil, windshield wiper fluid, the kind of bulk items you'd keep in a gas station. The yellow light was coming from an old desk lamp, the kind with a green glass shade. It cast long shadows across the room, making everything look distorted and wrong. And there, in the corner, was the source of the clicking sound. It was a fuel pump meter, not attached to anything, just sitting on a shelf, the numbers rolling over and over. Click, 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 click. The digital display showed gallons being pumped. 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Climbing steadily even though there was no hose, no vehicle, nothing being fueled. I walked over to it, transfixed. The numbers just kept climbing. 1.0, 1.5, 2.0. On and on. "What the hell?" I whispered. I reached out to touch it, to see if maybe I could turn it off, stop that incessant clicking. My fingers were inches from the device when it suddenly stopped. Complete silence. The numbers on the display froze at exactly 4.7 gallons. Then, as I watched, they began counting backward. 4.6, 4.5, 4.4. Click, 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 click. But in reverse now, like the pump was somehow sucking the fuel back. I pulled my hand away and backed up a step. This wasn't possible. Pumps don't run without power, don't count without being triggered, and definitely don't count backward. Behind me, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. The front door opening. The bell, I hadn't noticed a bell before, jingling cheerfully. I spun around and looked through the doorway into the main store. I couldn't see the entrance from this angle, but I could hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate moving across the linoleum floor. Someone had come in. Relief flooded through me. Another person. Another driver who'd taken the exit, maybe. Or the station attendant coming back from wherever they'd been. Someone who could explain what was happening, who could help me get out of here. "Hey," I called out, moving toward the door. "Hey, I'm back here, I need help." The footsteps stopped. I stepped into the main store and looked around. Empty. Completely empty. But I'd heard someone. I definitely heard footsteps. "Hello?" I said, quieter now. No response. I walked around the counter, checking the aisles. Nobody. I went to the front door and tried it again. Still locked. But I'd heard it open. I'd heard the bell unless I hadn't, unless I was starting to lose it, hearing things that weren't there. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to center myself. Think, Wyatt. Think rationally. There has to be an explanation. Maybe the station was automated somehow. Maybe that's why there was no attendant. The lights were on timers. The door had some kind of malfunction. The pump meter in the back was just a broken piece of equipment acting up. All perfectly reasonable explanations if I didn't think about them too hard. But the logbook. The entry with my name and the current time, written before I'd even walked in. How did I explain that? I couldn't, so I decided not to try. Focus on getting out. That was the priority. I went back to the windows and examined them more carefully. They were just regular glass as far as I could tell. Not painted, not covered. But looking through them was like looking into a cave, nothing but absolute darkness. I pressed my hand against the glass. It was cold, much colder than it should be with the heat running inside. I grabbed a can of motor oil from a nearby shelf and hefted it, considering. If I broke the window, I could climb out. But what if there was nothing out there? What if the darkness through the glass was real somehow, and breaking through would just let it in? I stood there with the can in my hand, paralyzed by indecision, when the lights went out. Not flickering this time. Just gone. Complete darkness. So absolute I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I dropped the can, heard it hit the floor with a metallic clatter, and spun around, disoriented. My eyes struggled to adjust, searching for any source of light. There, the back room. That yellow glow from the desk lamp spilling through the doorway. And in that light I saw movement. Shadows moving against shadows. Multiple shapes converging on the doorway from inside the back room. The clicking started again. But not just one pump now. Multiple pumps. Click, 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 click. Overlapping rhythms creating a sound like insects as is skittering across concrete. I fumbled for my phone, pulled it out, turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the store in harsh white light. Empty. The store was empty. The back room door was closed. But I'd seen them. I'd seen shapes moving. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked at the screen, still no signal. But there was a notification, a text message. That was impossible. You can't receive texts without a signal. I opened it anyway. The message was from an unknown number. No name, no area code I recognized, just a message. Exit 47 doesn't exist. Check your map. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I opened my Maps app. It loaded slowly. How was it loading with no signal? And showed my location. I was on Route 287. But according to the map, I was on a straight stretch of highway with no exits for 20 miles in either direction. Exit 47 didn't exist, had never existed. Another text came through. The storm is getting worse. Your truck is buried. I ran to the window and shined my phone light through the glass. For just a second, I saw something. Snow. Mountains of it, piled against the window higher than the building. And something dark moving through it. A shape. Too large to be human. Then the phone light dimmed. Battery at 2%. It had been fully charged when I left Denver. No, 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 I muttered, frantically trying to preserve what little power I had left. The phone buzzed again. Another message. You should have stayed on the highway. The phone died. Darkness crashed back over me, broken only by that yellow glow from the back room. The clicking continued, dozens of phantom pumps all running at once, counting up and up and up. I stood there in the darkness, trying not to panic, trying to think. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I was probably hypothermic. That was it. I'd crashed in the storm and this was all a hallucination. My brain shutting down from the cold. But if that was true, why did everything feel so solid? Why could I smell the coffee and the old plastic of the merchandise and that faint chemical smell of gasoline? The lights flickered back on. I was standing in a different part of the store. I didn't remember moving, but I was near the back, by the shelves of motor oil. How had I gotten here? And the windows, I could see through them now. Not darkness, not snow, just static. Like a television tuned to a dead channel. Gray and white fuzz filling the windows from edge to edge. I walked toward the nearest window and stared at the static. It seemed to pulse and writhe, patterns forming and dissolving too quickly to follow. And in those patterns I could almost see shapes, faces maybe, or hands, reaching toward the glass from the other side. I touched the window. It was hot, burning hot, like the glass had been sitting in direct sunlight for hours. I yanked my hand back, and that's when I noticed the pumps outside. Through the static, like shadows, I could see them. And they were running, all of them. Hoses hanging in midair, nozzles pumping fuel into nothing, the numbers on the displays spinning wildly. But there were no vehicles, no one to fuel, just the pumps, running endlessly into the void. I backed away from the window and bumped into something. I spun around. It was one of the shelves, but the products on it had changed. Where there had been motor oil, there was now, I don't even know how to describe it, containers, but wrong. Labels that were text, but not any language I'd ever seen. Shapes that hurt to look at directly. I blinked, and they were motor oil containers again. Normal. Familiar. "I need to get out of here," I said out loud. My voice sounded strange, distant, like I was hearing it through water. The clicking stopped, all at once. Every phantom pump, silent. The silence was worse than the sound had been. I held my breath, listening. For what, I didn't know. Just listening. And then I heard it. Footsteps again. But not from the entrance this time. From above. I looked up at the ceiling. Stained acoustic tiles, fluorescent lights, nothing unusual. But the footsteps continued directly overhead. Walking. Pacing. Like someone in an apartment upstairs. Except this was a single-story building. There was no upstairs. The footsteps stopped directly above me. I waited, every muscle tensed, for something to happen. A drop of liquid fell from the ceiling tile. It hit my shoulder, dark and viscous. I looked down at it. Not water, thicker. In the fluorescent light it looked almost like oil, motor oil. Another drop, and another, coming faster now. I looked up. The ceiling tile was bulging downward, sagging under some weight. More liquid dripped through, splattering on the floor around me. The tile creaked, the metal frame holding it groaning. I ran. Didn't think, just ran toward the back room. I heard the ceiling tile crash behind me, something heavy hitting the floor with a wet thud. I didn't look back. I burst through the back room door and slammed it shut behind me. The clicking started again immediately. All the pumps at once deafening in the small space. I put my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside my head now. The desk lamp flickered. In the strobing light I saw them, figures, 5 or 6 of them, standing in the corners of the room, in the shadows, wherever the light didn't quite reach. They were perfectly still, watching me. "What do you want?" I screamed over the clicking. "What the fuck do you want from me?" One of them moved, just slightly, tilted its head, like it was considering the question. Then it spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Not words exactly, more like the feeling of words. And what it said, or what I understood it to say, was fuel. The clicking grew louder. The pump meter on the shelf was spinning wildly now, the numbers a blur. 100 gallons, 500, 1,000. Climbing impossibly fast. The figures started moving toward me. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. I looked around frantically for another exit, there. A door in the back wall. I'd thought it was just a closet, but maybe... I lunged for it, grabbed the handle, pulled it open. Cold air rushed in. Real cold, winter cold, and light, gray, dawn light. I stumbled through the door and found myself outside. The storm had stopped. The snow was deep, 3 feet at least, but the sky was clear. And behind me, where the gas station should have been, there was nothing. Just empty desert. The snow already melting in the morning sun. I was standing in the middle of nowhere, no road, no building, no exit 47. But in the snow around me, I could see tire tracks. My tire tracks. Leading here and then stopping, like my truck had simply vanished from beneath me mid-drive. And in the distance, barely visible through the morning haze, I could see Route 287, the highway I'd left, the highway I needed to get back to. I started walking. It took me 3 hours to reach the highway, 3 hours of trudging through snow, my legs going numb, my lungs burning from the cold. Twice, I thought I heard the clicking sound behind me. Twice, I refused to look back. When I finally collapsed on the shoulder of Route 287, a truck stopped. A real truck, with a real driver who looked at me like I was a ghost. "Jesus, buddy," he said. "You okay? Where's your rig?" I couldn't answer. I just let him help me into his cab, let him call the police, let him wrap me in a blanket while I shivered and tried to remember how to breathe normally. The police found my truck 2 days later. It was off Route 287, 40 miles south of where I'd supposedly exited. Buried in a snowdrift. Empty. The electronics I'd been hauling were gone. No sign of theft, no footprints, nothing, just gone. The insurance company called it weather-related damage. My dispatcher called it negligence. I lost my contract with that client. But none of them could explain the fuel. When they pulled my truck out of the snow, the tank was empty, completely dry. I'd filled up in Pueblo with 200 gallons. The distance I'd driven should have used maybe 30. 70 gallons. Just gone. And when they checked the odometer, it showed I'd driven 847 miles since Pueblo, but I'd only traveled maybe 200 miles down the highway. 647 miles. Unaccounted for. I don't drive Route 287 anymore. I don't care how much time it adds to the trip. I take the long way around. Always. Because sometimes, late at night when I'm on an empty highway, I see it in the distance. A green sign emerging from the darkness. Exit 47. And I know if I take it, this time I won't make it back. After they found my truck, I took 2 weeks off. Told my dispatcher I needed to recover from the exposure, which was true enough. I'd gotten minor frostbite on 3 toes from that walk through the snow, and the doctors wanted to make sure I didn't develop any complications. But the real reason I needed time off was that I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that station, seeing those figures in the shadows, hearing that clicking sound. Feeling the weight of all that impossible fuel being pumped into nothing, into nowhere. I saw a therapist. Didn't tell her the truth, of course. Told her I'd gotten disoriented in the storm, had some kind of panic attack. Hallucinated the whole thing. She nodded sympathetically and prescribed anti-anxiety medication. The pills helped with the shaking. They didn't help with the dreams. 2 weeks turned into 3, then 4. My savings were running out, but I couldn't bring myself to get back in a truck. Every time I thought about it, I'd feel that same cold certainty. If I went back on the road, I'd end up at exit 47 again. My landlord wasn't sympathetic. Rent was due. Either I paid or I was out. So in early December, I took a short haul, Denver to Colorado Springs, just 2 hours each way. Nothing that would put me on Route 287 or anywhere near that stretch of New Mexico highway. It should have been fine. I picked up the load, furniture, nothing fancy, and headed south on I-25. It was a clear day, no snow in the forecast, plenty of traffic. Normal, safe. I made it to Colorado Springs without incident. Delivered the furniture, got the paperwork signed, grabbed lunch at a diner I'd been to a dozen times before. Everything was fine until I started the drive back. I was about 20 minutes north of the Springs when I saw it. A green highway sign ahead, barely visible in the late afternoon sun. Exit 47. Services. My heart stopped. That was impossible. This was I-25. Exit 47 was a rest area I'd used plenty of times. Just bathrooms and vending machines. Nothing weird. But as I got closer, the sign changed. Not physically, It was the same green sign, but the letters seemed to shift, rearrange themselves. Exit 47 became something else. Symbols I didn't recognize. Then back to exit 47. Then symbols again. I blinked hard, gripping the wheel. I was seeing things, stress, lack of sleep, the anti-anxiety meds maybe. I passed the exit at 70 miles per hour, didn't slow down, didn't look back. But in my side mirror, I saw it. Just for a second. The service area wasn't there. Where the rest stop should have been, there was a gas station. Old style. Pumps under an overhang. Windows showing that familiar yellow glow. I jerked my eyes back to the road and kept driving. When I got home, I checked my logbook. The trip from Colorado Springs had taken the correct amount of time. The mileage was right. Everything was normal, except for one thing. My fuel gauge showed I'd used almost a full tank. The trip should have used maybe a quarter tank. I told myself it was a malfunction. Got the gauge checked at a mechanic the next day. He said it was working fine, but I knew the truth. Somehow, that station had found me, had taken what it wanted. Fuel. The jobs started getting harder to find. Word spreads fast in the trucking community. I'd lost cargo. Had been found disoriented in the snow with a wild story about a storm. Insurance rates went up. Clients got nervous. By January, I was taking whatever work I could get, mostly local stuff. Short hauls that didn't pay well, but at least I was working. That's when I met Travis. He was another trucker, older guy, maybe 60. We got to talking at a truck stop outside Denver. He noticed I was nursing a coffee that had gone cold, staring at a map like it might bite me. "You okay, son?" he asked. I almost told him to mind his own business, but there was something about his eyes, like he'd seen things, like he might understand. "You ever see something on the road that shouldn't exist?" I asked. He didn't laugh. Didn't call me crazy. He just sat down across from me and nodded. "Exit 47, he said. The coffee cup slipped from my hand. Travis caught it before it hit the floor. "How did you—" "Because I've been there too," he said quietly. "Different highway. Same exit number, same station." He told me his story. It had happened to him 15 years ago, on Route 80 in Wyoming. He'd taken an exit during a blizzard, found a gas station that shouldn't exist. He'd made it out, but barely. Lost 3 days he couldn't account for. His truck was found 100 miles from where he'd exited, the fuel tank bone dry. "It's not the only one," Travis said. "I've talked to other drivers over the years. Always the same story. Exit 47, a storm, a station that isn't on any map, and fuel. It always takes the fuel." "Why?" I asked. "What is it?" He shook his head. "I don't know. But I've got a theory. You know how some places just feel wrong? Like they're built on bad ground or something terrible happened there?" I nodded. "I think the highways are like that. We've paved over so much, old native land, graveyards, battlefields. And sometimes something pushes back, creates a space that shouldn't exist, a place between places." "That sounds insane." "Yeah," he agreed. "But so does a gas station that runs on fuel. It steals from dimensional travelers, and we both know that's real." He gave me a piece of advice before he left. "Don't try to understand it. Don't try to find it again. And whatever you do, if you see exit 47, don't take it. No matter how bad the storm is, no matter how desperate you are, just drive past." I tried to follow that advice. I really did. But in February, I got a call for a run that I couldn't afford to turn down. Good money. Simple cargo. The only problem, the route took me through New Mexico. On Route 287, I almost said no, but my bank account was in the red. I was 3 months behind on rent. This job would get me back on my feet. I took it. I planned everything perfectly, left early so I'd make the drive during daylight, checked the weather obsessively, took the same route I'd been on that night but in reverse. Figured if I approached from the opposite direction, maybe I wouldn't encounter the same exit. For the first 3 hours, everything was fine. Then the sky started changing. It wasn't a storm, the forecast was clear. But the sky took on that same gray color I remembered from November. The temperature started dropping, the numbers on my dashboard thermometer falling faster than they should have. And then I felt it, that pulling sensation. Like the highway itself was tilting, funneling me toward something inevitable. I saw the sign from a mile away, Exit 47, Services. This time, it was on the right side of the highway. Last time, it had been on the left. The exit didn't care which direction I was driving. It was waiting for me. I gripped the wheel and kept my foot steady on the gas. I wasn't stopping. I wasn't exiting. I was going to drive right past and keep going. But as I got closer, I felt the truck pulling. Not mechanically. The steering was fine. But like something was reaching out from that exit, grabbing hold of me, trying to drag me off the highway. I fought it. Kept the truck straight, past the exit doing 75. In my mirror, I saw the service area, the gas station. It looked different in daylight, more decayed. The windows broken, the pumps rusted, like it had aged decades in just a few months. And standing in front of the building watching me drive away were the figures. I could see them clearly this time. They looked almost human. Almost, but their proportions were wrong, their movements too smooth, their faces too blank. One of them raised a hand, not waving, just pointing at me, marking me. I drove for another 5 miles before I realized something was wrong. The fuel gauge was dropping. Fast. Faster than it should be. I watched it fall from half a tank to a quarter, then to empty. The low fuel warning light came on. No, I said. No, no, no. I looked for an exit, a real exit, any exit. But the highway stretched on, empty and endless. The engine started to sputter. I was going to run out of fuel in the middle of nowhere, with no help for miles. And I knew with absolute certainty that if I stopped, the station would come to me. I coasted as far as I could, the truck losing speed. 60, 50, 40, the engine coughed and died. I rolled to a stop on the shoulder. Silence. I sat there, hands still gripping the wheel, afraid to move, afraid to look in the mirrors, afraid to see what I knew would be there. A sound reached me through the cab, soft, distant, but growing closer. Click, 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 click. A fuel pump, running. I forced myself to look in the side mirror. The gas station was there, not behind me where it should be, right next to me, like it had materialized on the shoulder of the highway, impossible and real. The pumps were running, all of them. Hoses snaking toward my truck. And the figures were walking toward me, slow, purposeful. One of them reached my driver's side door. It pressed its hand against the window. The glass fogged where it touched, frost spreading in crystalline patterns. It looked at me through the window. Its face was blank. No eyes, no mouth. Just smooth skin where features should be. It tilted its head exactly like they'd done in the back room. Then it spoke. Not with a mouth, it didn't have a mouth. The words just appeared in my head. Fuel. The door handle started to turn. I screamed and dove for the passenger side, scrambling across the cab. I hit the passenger door with my shoulder spilling out onto the pavement. The figures were on that side, too, waiting. I ran, into the scrubland beside the highway, stumbling over rocks and brush. Behind me, I could hear them. Not footsteps exactly, just that sense of movement, of pursuit. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I collapsed behind a boulder and looked back. The station was gone. The highway was empty. No truck, no figures, nothing. Just me, alone in the desert, with no idea where I was or how I'd get back. I found the highway again after an hour of walking. Flagged down a passing car. The driver was kind enough to give me a ride to the nearest town. My truck was found the next day, same as before. Off the highway in an impossible location, fuel tank empty, cargo gone. I quit trucking the next week. I work at a warehouse now, loading docks. It doesn't pay as well, but I don't care, because I know the truth. Exit 47 isn't done with me. It's waiting, gathering fuel, building power. And one day, it's going to come for me again. Not on the highway this time, wherever I am, whenever it's ready. 3 months after I quit trucking, I convinced myself I was safe. I'd found a rhythm in the warehouse job. Wake up, work, go home, sleep. No highways, no long drives, no chance of seeing that exit ever again. I should have known better. It started small. I'd be driving to work, just a 15-minute commute through Denver suburbs, and I'd see something in my peripheral vision. A green sign, always exit 47. But when I looked directly at it, it would be something normal. A speed limit sign, a street name, my eyes playing tricks. Then my car started acting strange. The fuel gauge would drop randomly. I'd fill up in the morning and by afternoon I'd be on empty. The mechanic couldn't find anything wrong. Said the gauge was working perfectly. But I knew better. Something was draining my tank, taking what it needed. I switched to public transit, buses, the light rail, anything that meant I wasn't responsible for fuel. That worked for about a week. Then I started seeing the station in my dreams. But these weren't like the nightmares I'd had before. These dreams were different, more vivid, more real. In them, I was standing in the station, working there, wearing a name tag that said attendant, serving customers who came and went like ghosts, watching the pumps run endlessly outside, and always, in the back room, that clicking sound, the fuel meters spinning, counting up and up and up. I'd wake up exhausted, like I'd actually been working all night. One morning, I found motor oil on my hands, under my fingernails, in the creases of my palms. I hadn't touched motor oil in months. I washed it off and tried not to think about it. Tried to convince myself I'd spilled something at the warehouse, forgotten about it. But that night, I found a receipt in my pocket, printed on old thermal paper, the kind gas stations used in the 80s. Station 47 exit. 287 fuel, 4.7. Gallons attendant, Wyatt. B. Thank you for your service. I burned the receipt, threw away the clothes I'd been wearing. Scrubbed my hands until they were raw. It didn't matter. The next night, I was back in the dream, working my shift, serving travelers who needed fuel. And this time I recognized one of them. It was me, a different version of me. Younger, wearing the clothes I'd had on that night in November. He looked scared, lost. I watched myself walk into the station, watched myself look around with confused, frightened eyes, and I knew what I had to do. I walked up to the younger me, smiled, said the words that I remembered hearing. "Can I help you find something?" I woke up screaming. Travis called me the next day. I hadn't heard from him since that conversation at the truck stop. "Wyatt," he said, his voice urgent. "Are you working there?" "What? Working where?" "The station. Are you working shifts at the station?" I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "I'm taking that as a yes," Travis continued. "Listen to me carefully. You need to stop. You need to fight it. Once you become part of the station, you can't leave. Do you understand? You'll be there forever. How do I stop it? I managed to ask. I don't know, he said, and I could hear the despair in his voice. I've been trying to figure that out for 15 years. Every driver I've talked to who got too close, they all end up the same way. Working shifts, fading, eventually they just disappear. Stop answering calls, stop existing in the normal world. There has to be a way. Maybe there is, but I haven't found it. And Wyatt? I'm starting to see the signs too. I think it's coming for me again. After all these years, it's finally coming to collect. The line went dead. I tried calling back. The number was disconnected. That was 2 months ago. Since then, the dreams have gotten longer, more frequent. I'm spending more time at the station than I am in the real world. Last week, I worked a full 8-hour shift, served dozens of travelers, watched the pumps run, counted the fuel. I woke up and 12 hours had passed, but I'd been asleep for only 8. Time doesn't work the same way at the station. Travis was right about that. I can feel myself fading, becoming less real. Sometimes I look in the mirror and my reflection is transparent, like I'm barely there. My landlord left a note on my door yesterday, asking if I still lived here. Said he hadn't seen me in weeks. But I was here. I've been here every day. Haven't I? I don't know anymore. Tonight, I'm going to try something. One last attempt to break free. I'm going to go back to Route 287, going to find exit 47, and I'm going to walk into that station while I'm awake, fully conscious, and demand answers. Maybe it'll kill me. Maybe I'll end up trapped there forever. But at least I'll know. At least I'll understand what's happening to me. I'm writing this down in case I don't make it back. In case someone finds this and wonders what happened to Wyatt Briggs, the trucker who lost his mind and disappeared. I'm not crazy, I want to make that clear. Exit 47 is real. The station is real, and it's hungry. It feeds on fuel, on the energy we use to move through the world. And once it marks you, once it decides you belong to it, there's no escape. Maybe there never was. Maybe, from the moment I took that exit in the storm, I was already gone. But I have to try. I have to know if there's a way out. The following entry was found written in different handwriting, dated 3 days later. They found Wyatt's car on the shoulder of Route 287, engine running, fuel tank empty. No sign of the driver. Search parties combed the area for a week. Nothing. The GPS in his car showed he'd driven 847 miles before stopping, but Route 287 doesn't extend that far in either direction. Those extra miles, unaccounted for. His phone was in the car. One unsent text message in the drafts. I found it. The station is everywhere. Exit 47 is on every highway, waiting. And I understand now, it doesn't take fuel, it is fuel. It's the space between here and there. The energy that moves us from place to place. And we're not travelers passing through. We're the fuel we always were. The message was never sent. Wyatt Briggs was never found. But drivers on Route 287 report seeing something strange. A gas station that appears and disappears. Always during bad weather. Always at night. And sometimes, if you stop there, a man who looks like Wyatt serves you. Smiles, asks if you need fuel. He wears a name tag. It says attendant. And behind him, through the door to the back room, you can hear it. Click, 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 click. The pumps, running forever. Counting fuel that flows from nowhere to nothing. Welcome to Exit 47. Your shift starts soon. Name's Mason. Mason Hayes. I've been running freight for 8 years, mostly Pacific Northwest routes. Seattle down to Portland, sometimes as far as Sacramento. It's good work if you don't mind the rain, which I don't. Grew up in Oregon. Rain feels like home. I'm telling you this because what happened to me doesn't make sense. I'm not the kind of guy who sees things. I don't believe in ghosts or UFOs or any of that conspiracy theory nonsense. I believe in what I can see, what I can touch, what shows up on my GPS and my logbook. But sometimes, the things you can see are the ones that destroy you. This started in late March, on a run I'd done maybe 50 times before. Simple job. Pick up restaurant equipment in Tacoma, deliver it to a new place opening in Redding, California. Should have been about 8 hours straight through, maybe 10 with breaks. I left Tacoma around 11 p.m., later than I'd planned. The loading took forever. The warehouse crew was short-staffed and the equipment was heavier than the manifest said. By the time I got on I-5 South, it was pushing midnight. The highway was empty. That's normal for this time of night, especially on a Wednesday. Most of the traffic is daytime commuters and long-haul guys who stick to daylight hours. I prefer nights. Less traffic, easier driving, and you can make better time. I had my playlist going, classic country, the stuff my dad used to listen to, and 3 energy drinks lined up in the cup holders. Everything was routine. Normal. Around 2 a.m., I crossed into Oregon. The rain had started, that soft, persistent drizzle that the Pacific Northwest specializes in. Not enough to be dangerous, just enough to make the road gleam black under my headlights. I was maybe 30 miles south of Portland when I started feeling wrong. Not sick wrong. More like aware wrong. Like someone had just walked into a room behind me, and I could feel their presence even though I couldn't see them. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I checked the mirrors. Nothing but empty highway and rain. I turned down the music, listened. The truck sounded fine. Engine humming steady, no weird rattles or knocks. Rain pattering on the roof. My own breathing, normal. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I passed a mile marker 267. Checked my GPS. Everything looked right. I was on course, making good time, no detours needed. The feeling intensified. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like the air pressure in the cab had changed. Like I was ascending in an airplane, that pressure building behind your ears. But I was on flat highway, sea level. Then I saw the sign. It was one of those old wooden signs, the kind they stopped using in the 70s when everything went to reflective metal. Hand-painted letters, weather-worn, route stop, 2 miles. I'd never seen that sign before, and I'd driven this stretch of I-5 dozens of times. I slowed down without really meaning to. From 70 to 60, my foot just eased off the gas. The feeling of wrongness was stronger now, almost nauseating. Another sign appeared. Route stop, 1 mile. Last services, 87 miles. That couldn't be right. There was a truck stop about 40 miles south. I'd stopped there plenty of times, but something made me keep watching for it. Curiosity, maybe. Or that same self-destructive impulse that makes you slow down to look at car wrecks. The exit appeared exactly 1 mile later. Not an interstate exit, this was older. The kind of turnoff that existed before they built the highway. A narrow 2-lane road cutting off into the darkness, marked by a single reflective post. I should have kept driving. Every rational instinct said to stay on the highway, ignore the weird signs, chalk it up to exhaustion or old infrastructure that hadn't been properly removed. But I took the exit. I don't know why. I've thought about it 1,000 times since then. Tried to understand what made me turn that wheel. Maybe it was the feeling. That sense of something waiting. Something that would be offended if I just drove past. The exit ramp was rough, pitted with potholes. My truck bounced and groaned. The road curved away from the highway, descending slightly, and within seconds I couldn't see I-5 anymore. Just darkness and rain, and the narrow beam of my headlights. I drove for maybe 3 minutes before I saw the lights. Not bright lights, not the welcoming glow of a modern truck stop. These were dim, flickering, that sickly blue-white color of old neon. They outlined a building maybe 100 yards ahead. As I got closer, I could make out details. It was a route stop, all right. The kind that used to dot highways in the 40s and 50s. Single-story rectangular building, flat roof, probably concrete block construction. A covered area over what looked like 2 old pumps, and above it all, a neon sign that said "Route Stop" in cursive letters, half the tubes dark or flickering. The place looked abandoned, or should have been abandoned. The windows were dark except for one, a small window near the door that glowed with that same blue-white neon light. I pulled into the lot slowly. The pavement was cracked, weeds growing through the gaps. The pumps were ancient, the kind with glass cylinders on top that showed the fuel level. They looked like they hadn't worked in decades. But the lights were on. Someone had to be maintaining them. Someone had to be paying the electric bill. I put the truck in park and sat there, engine idling, debating. I didn't need gas, didn't need food, didn't need to use a bathroom. There was absolutely no reason to get out. But that feeling was back, stronger now. Not threatening exactly, but expectant. Like the building itself was waiting for me to come inside. I turned off the engine. The silence was immediate and complete. The rain had stopped. I hadn't noticed when. No wind, no distant traffic sounds from the highway, just my own breathing and the tick-tick-tick of the engine cooling. I got out and immediately noticed something strange about the air. It smelled wrong. Not bad wrong, chemical wrong. Like ozone after a lightning strike mixed with something else. Something I couldn't identify, but that triggered a deep, animal unease. The building was maybe 20 feet away. Up close, I could see it was in better shape than I'd thought. The concrete blocks were weathered but intact. The windows, though dark, weren't broken. Even the door looked solid, painted that industrial green they used in old government buildings. There was a hand-lettered sign in the window. Open. I walked to the door and tried the handle. It turned easily, the door swinging inward with a soft creak. Warm air rushed out. Not hot, but noticeably warmer than the cold March night. And with it came a smell. Coffee and old grease, and that same ozone scent. I stepped inside. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from a 50s-era route stop. Linoleum floor in a black and white checkerboard pattern, worn down in the traffic paths. A long counter with a register that had to be original to the building. Behind it, a coffee maker, one of those ancient percolators with a glass knob on top. And the pot was full, steam rising from it. The walls were lined with shelves, but most of them were empty. A few scattered items remained. Cans of motor oil with labels so faded I couldn't read them. A dusty display of road maps. A wire rack that might have once held chips or candy. But the lights worked. Fluorescent tubes overhead, buzzing softly. And that neon glow from the window, casting everything in that blue-white light. "Hello?" I called out. My voice didn't echo. It just stopped, absorbed by the space like the building had swallowed the sound. No response. I walked further in, my boots squeaking on the old linoleum. The counter had a layer of dust on it, but not as much as you'd expect for an abandoned building. Someone had been here. Recently. Behind the counter, I could see a doorway leading to a back room. No light coming from there, just darkness. On the counter itself, I noticed something that made me stop. A coffee cup. White ceramic, standard diner style. It was sitting right in front of the register and it was full. Steam rising from the surface. Fresh coffee. I reached out and touched the side of the cup, hot, like it had just been poured. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. Anyone here? I don't mean to intrude. I just saw your lights and... A sound interrupted me. From outside, a sound I recognized immediately. A pump running. One of those old mechanical pumps, the handle being worked. Fuel flowing through ancient pipes. I turned and looked through the window. The pumps were outside, under their cover. And one of them was running. I could see the numbers in the glass cylinder spinning, fuel rising. But there was no one there. No vehicle. No one working the handle. The pump was running by itself. I backed away from the window, my heart starting to race. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. I should leave. Get back in my truck. Get back to the highway. Forget I ever saw this place. But I couldn't look away from that pump. The numbers kept spinning, gallons accumulating, 5, 10, 15, on and on, fuel pumping into nothing. Behind me, I heard a door creak. The back room, I spun it around. The doorway was still dark, but I could feel something there. A presence, watching me. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. No answer, just that sense of being observed, studied. I took a step toward the exit, then another. The coffee cup on the counter moved, just an inch, like someone had nudged it, but there was no one there. I ran, bolted for the door, yanked it open, burst out into the cold night air. I made it to my truck in seconds, threw myself into the cab, locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine turned over once, twice, then caught. I threw the truck into gear and drove. I didn't look back. Didn't check the mirrors. Just focused on getting back to that exit, back to the highway, back to somewhere that made sense. The access road seemed longer this time. I drove for what felt like 10 minutes before I saw the entrance ramp to I-5. I took it too fast, the truck lurching as I merged onto the highway. Only when I was back in the right lane, doing 70, with mile markers passing by at regular intervals, did I let myself breathe. I checked the GPS. It showed I was exactly where I should be. No detour, no missing time, like I'd never left the highway at all. But my fuel gauge told a different story. When I'd stopped, I'd had 3/4 of a tank. Now, it showed just over half. I'd lost a 1/4 tank of diesel. Somewhere between that route stop and the highway, my truck had burned fuel that shouldn't have been burned. I drove the rest of the way to Reading without stopping. Made my delivery right on time. Got my paperwork signed. Everything was normal. Except I couldn't stop thinking about that coffee cup. The steam rising from it. The way it had moved, and the pump, running and running, pouring fuel into the void. A week later, I drove that route again. Daylight this time. I looked for the exit. Looked for those wooden signs. They weren't there, just unbroken highway mile after mile. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew where I'd been. And late at night, when I'm driving through empty stretches of highway, I sometimes see it in the distance. A flicker of blue-white neon, a sign that says route stop, waiting for me to come back. I didn't tell anyone about the route stop. What would I say? I saw an abandoned gas station that wasn't there and lost some fuel I couldn't account for. I'd sound crazy. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. That coffee cup, the pump running, the feeling of being watched from that dark doorway. I started researching old route stops in Oregon. Spent hours in online archives, looking at historical maps, reading about highway development in the 40s and 50s. I found dozens of them. Little service stations that had been built along the old routes before the interstate system. Most of them were gone now, demolished or left to rot. A few had been converted into other businesses, antique shops, diners, the occasional private residence, but I couldn't find any reference to a route stop where I'd seen one. That stretch of I-5 had been built in the 60s, cutting through empty farmland. A According to the maps, there had never been anything there. I should have let it go. But I've never been good at letting things go. 3 weeks after my first visit, I took the same run, Tacoma to Redding. Same time, same route. I told myself I was just doing my job, but I knew the truth. I was looking for it. I left Tacoma at 11:30 p.m., later than last time. Traffic was light. Rain started just south of Portland, that same persistent drizzle. Around 2 a.m., I felt it again. That pressure. That sense of presence. I watched for the signs. Mile marker 267 passed. Then 268. I was in the right area. And there it was. The same wooden sign. Hand-painted letters. Route stop. 2 miles. This time I didn't hesitate. I took the exit as soon as it appeared. The access road was exactly as I remembered. Rough pavement, potholes, descending away from the highway into darkness, and at the end, those blue-white neon lights. The building looked the same. Same cracked parking lot, same ancient pumps, same open sign in the window. But something was different. There was a vehicle parked near the entrance. Not a modern car. It was an old truck, maybe from the 60s. Faded blue paint, chrome bumpers, the bed empty. It looked like it had been sitting there for years. I parked next to it and got out. The air had that same wrong smell, ozone and chemicals. The rain had stopped again, just like last time. I walked over to the old truck and looked inside. The cab was empty, but the keys were in the ignition. I tried the door, unlocked. On impulse, I turned the key. The engine turned over immediately, fired up like it had just been driven yesterday. It idled smooth, no knocking, no problems. I turned it off and stepped back, my heart pounding. That truck should have been dead, rusted. Nothing inside it should work. But it ran perfectly. I looked at the route stop. The neon sign flickered, some letters going dark for a moment before coming back. Route stop, route stop, route. I walked to the door and pushed it open. The interior was different this time. Not a lot, but enough to notice. The shelves weren't quite as empty. There were more items now. Cans of food with labels I didn't recognize. Bottles of soda in shapes I'd never seen. A rack of magazines with covers that seemed to shift when I looked directly at them. The coffee pot was still on the counter, still full, still steaming. But there were 2 cups now, both fresh. Both waiting. "Hello?" I called out. This time, I got an answer. "Be right with you." A man's voice coming from the back room. Casual, friendly, like this was a normal transaction. I froze, every muscle tensed. Someone was here. An actual person. Footsteps approached from the back. Slow, steady, boot heels on linoleum. A man emerged from the doorway. He was maybe 60, weathered face, wearing coveralls and a flannel shirt. He looked completely normal, completely real. "Sorry about that," he said, smiling. "Was doing some inventory. You need gas? Coffee?" I couldn't speak for a moment. He just stood there waiting patiently. I don't need gas," I finally managed. "I was just... The sign said this was open." "Always open," he said. 24 hours. Been that way since 1952. That would make this place over 60 years old. But he said it like the route stop had been operating continuously all that time. "I drive this route a lot," I said carefully. "I've never seen this place before." He shrugged. "Most people don't. You've got to be looking for it. Or it's got to be looking for you." He walked behind the counter and grabbed one of the coffee cups. "You sure you don't want some coffee? It's fresh." "No, thank you. I should get back on the road." "Long drive ahead?" "Redding. Delivering restaurant equipment. He nodded, like this was the most normal conversation in the world. "Be careful out there. Roads get strange this time of night." "Strange how?" He looked at me then, really looked at me. His eyes were wrong. Not the color or the shape, just the way they reflected the neon light. Like there was something behind them that wasn't entirely human. "Strange, like you've already noticed," he said. "You've been here before, 3 weeks ago. Came in, saw the pump running, got scared and left." I hadn't told him that. Couldn't have told him, but he knew. "How? The station remembers everyone who visits," he said. "Keeps a record. You're Mason Hayes, drive a freightliner, live in Portland, divorced 2 years ago. No kids." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The station knows lots of things." I backed toward the door. "I'm leaving." "You can leave," he said. "But you'll come back. They always come back. The station has a way of calling to certain people. You felt it, didn't you? That pull. That's how you found us again." "There is no us," I said. "You're just one guy running an illegal station off the interstate." He laughed, actually laughed. "Illegal, that's funny. Mason, this station existed before the interstate, before most of the highways, before you could drive from coast to coast without stopping for directions. We're older than the roads themselves." I grabbed the door handle. "The fuel," he said, stopping me. "You lost a quarter tank last time. Did you figure out where it went?" I didn't answer. "It's a toll," he continued, "for using the station, for seeing what most people can't see, the roads between roads, the spaces between here and there." He poured himself some coffee, the steam rising. "Most people pay without even knowing. A little fuel, a little time, a little memory. But you noticed. That makes you different." "I'm leaving," I said again. "Sure. Go ahead. But before you do, take a look outside. Check the pumps." I didn't want to, but something made me look. The pumps were running, both of them, numbers spinning in the glass cylinders. But this time there was something else. There were vehicles at the pumps. Old vehicles, a car from the 40s, a truck from the 30s. Both of them looked solid, real, but I could see through them. Just slightly, like they were projections not quite there. And there were people, figures in old clothes filling their tanks, going through the motions. But like the vehicles, they were translucent. Ghosts of drivers long dead. "They all stop here eventually," the man said behind me. "Everyone who's ever driven these roads. The station exists in all times at once. What you're seeing is just one layer. There are others. Will be others. You might become one of them." I yanked the door open and ran. Out into the cold night, across the cracked pavement, to my truck. I fumbled with the keys, got the engine started, drove. As I pulled out, I looked in the side mirror. The man was standing in the doorway, watching me go. He raised his coffee cup in a kind of salute, and behind him I could see them. The figures, dozens of them, crowding the interior of the station, overlapping each other, all from different eras, all translucent, all watching me leave. I made it back to the highway in what felt like seconds. One moment I was on that access road, the next I was merging onto I-5. No transition, just a jump cut in reality. My fuel gauge showed I'd lost half a tank this time, but something else was different. My logbook, the one I keep meticulously updated, showed an entry I hadn't written. Route stop, 2:47 a.m., fuel, 28 gallons. Duration, 12 minutes. Except I'd been there for maybe 5 minutes, and I hadn't pumped any fuel. I looked at my watch. 3:15 a.m. I'd lost almost half an hour. Time that was just gone, unaccounted for except for that logbook entry in handwriting that looked like mine but wasn't quite right. I kept driving, made my delivery, acted normal. But I couldn't stop thinking about what the man had said. "You'll come back. They always come back." He was right. I've been back 4 times since then. Not on purpose, not really. But whenever I take that route at night, I feel the pull, and sometimes I'm strong enough to resist it. Sometimes I'm not. Each time, something is different. More vehicles. More figures. The shelves fuller, the station becoming more solid, more real, and each time I lose more. More fuel. More time. More memory. I forget things now. Small things. What I had for breakfast. The name of my dispatcher. Where I was supposed to deliver my last load. But I remember the station perfectly. Every detail. The blue-white neon. The coffee cup. The man in the coveralls. I'm forgetting my life and remembering the station. And I know what that means. The station is claiming me. Slowly. Visit by visit. One day I'll stop there and I won't leave. I'll become one of those translucent figures, going through the motions, pumping fuel that doesn't exist, paying a toll for roads I'm no longer traveling. I should stop driving that route. I know I should, but I can't. The pull is too strong now. After my 4th visit to the station, I stopped sleeping properly. I'd close my eyes and immediately I'd be there. Not dreaming about it, actually there. Standing in the route stop, watching the pumps run, seeing those translucent figures overlap and fade. I started keeping detailed notes, dates, times, fuel consumption, anything strange I noticed. I thought if I could document it, understand it, maybe I could figure out how to break free. The notes didn't help. They just showed me how much I was losing. April 3rd. Lost 32 gallons. 47 minutes unaccounted for. April 11th. Lost 41 gallons. 1 hour, 15 minutes missing. April 19. Lost half a tank. 2 hours gone. The gaps were getting bigger. The fuel consumption was accelerating. And each time I remembered less about the time I'd spent there. I'd wake up in my truck, parked on the highway shoulder, with no memory of how I'd gotten there. My logbook would have entries I didn't remember making. My GPS would show routes I didn't remember driving. I was losing myself piece by piece. In late April, I decided to take a different approach. If I couldn't stop going to the station, maybe I could learn more about it, understand what it wanted. Find others who'd been there. I started asking around, other truckers, old-timers who'd been driving since the 50s and 60s. Most of them looked at me like I was crazy when I described the route stop. But a few recognized the description, and their reactions told me everything I needed to know. One old driver named Garrett went pale when I mentioned the blue-white neon. He stood up without a word and walked away. Refused to talk to me after that. Another driver, a woman named Linda, who'd been hauling freight for 30 years, got quiet when I described the man in coveralls. "You've seen Billy," she said. "Billy?" That's what the old-timers called him. Back in the 60s and 70s, before I started driving, they said there was a station attendant who'd show up on certain routes, always the same guy, never aged, always friendly. But if you stopped at his station too many times, she trailed off. What? What happened? They'd disappear. Oh, their trucks would be found, usually on the side of some highway. But the drivers were just gone. No bodies, no trace, just gone. I felt cold. How many? Enough that it became a legend, a story to scare rookie drivers. Don't stop at Billy's station. But most people thought it was just a story. She looked at me hard. "You've been there more than once, haven't you?" I nodded. "How many times?" 4, maybe 5, I'm losing track. She stood up. "Stop going there. Whatever it takes. Change routes. Quit driving at night. Hell, quit trucking altogether, but stop going to that station. I can't. I try, but then you're already gone, she said flatly. I'm sorry, but once it has you, once you've crossed that threshold enough times, there's no coming back. You're just going through the motions until it decides to take you completely. She left me sitting there, alone in the truck stop diner, with the terrible certainty that she was right. I tried to quit, gave my dispatcher 2 weeks' notice, said I was getting out of trucking, finding something local. He accepted it without question. Probably thought I was having a breakdown, which wasn't far from the truth. My last scheduled run was May 1st. Portland to Eugene, a short haul, daylight hours. Should have been easy. I made the delivery with no problems. Started driving back to Portland around 4 p.m. Plenty of daylight left. No chance of encountering the station. But around Salem, I felt it. That pressure, that pull. It was stronger than ever before. Not a suggestion now, a demand. A hook in my chest, reeling me in. I tried to resist. Gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Focused on the road ahead. Told myself I was in control. The exit appeared, not at night, in broad daylight, on a completely different highway, but the signs were the same. Route stop, 2 miles. I took the exit. I don't remember making the decision. 1 second I was on I-5, the next I was on that access road descending into darkness even though it was 4 in the afternoon. The sky above me was still blue, but the road ahead was dark, like I was driving into a tunnel. And at the end, those blue-white neon lights. I parked in my usual spot. The old blue truck was there, but there were others now. A dozen vehicles, all from different eras, all looking solid and real and somehow wrong. I walked to the door like a man in a trance, pushed it open, stepped inside. The interior was crowded now. Shelves fully stocked with products that shouldn't exist. Brands I'd never heard of. Items that didn't make physical sense. Bottles that contained more liquid than they could hold. Cans that weighed nothing. Food that smelled fresh but looked decades old. And the figures. So many figures. They filled the station, overlapping each other, all going through the same motions. Browsing shelves, pouring coffee. Standing at the counter. Billy was behind the register. He smiled when he saw me. Mason, right on time. I don't want to be here, I said. I know, but you came anyway. That's how it works. The station calls, you answer. Eventually, you don't have a choice anymore. I looked around at the figures. What are they? Drivers, like you. People who stopped here once, twice, 3 times, until they couldn't leave anymore. Now they're part of the station, part of the road. They exist in the space between here and there, forever traveling, never arriving. I won't become one of them. You already are, Billy said gently. You just haven't accepted it yet. But you will. Could be today, could be next week, could be a year from now. But you'll accept it, and when you do, the transition will be easy, peaceful even. I backed towards the door. No, I'm leaving, and I'm never coming back. You've said that before. He was right. I had said it, after every visit, and I'd always come back. This time I mean it. Sure you do. He poured 2 cups of coffee. But before you go, let me show you something. He gestured toward the back room. The door was open, that yellow light spilling out. I'm not going back there. You should. You need to see. Need to understand what you're becoming part of. Against my better judgment, I walked toward the back room. Billy followed me. The room was different from what I expected. Bigger. Much bigger. It extended back farther than the building should allow, the walls fading into darkness. And it was full of roads. Not pictures of roads, actual roads. stretches of highway extending into the distance, floating in the space, crisscrossing each other at impossible angles. Some I recognized: I-5, Route 101, Highway 99. Others I'd never seen. And on those roads, vehicles, thousands of them, all driving, all moving, but going nowhere. Trapped in an endless loop. "This is what the station is," Billy said. "A nexus. A place where all roads meet, where all journeys converge. You're not in Oregon anymore, Mason. You're not in any place. You're in the space between all places, the road that connects every road." I stared at the impossible sight, my mind struggling to process it. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "I don't remember. Time doesn't work right in this place. Could be decades, could be centuries. I stopped being Billy a long time ago. Now I'm just the attendant, the one who helps new arrivals understand. I'm not arriving, I'm leaving. Not today, maybe, but soon." He was right. I could feel it. The pull was so strong now. Part of me wanted to just give in, stop fighting, accept whatever this was and let it take me. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I turned and ran, out of the back room, through the station, out the door, into my truck. Engine on, into gear, drive. The access road stretched ahead of me, but it wasn't the same road I'd come in on. It was longer now, darker. The highway seemed impossibly far away. I drove for what felt like hours. The road just kept going, stretching, never quite reaching the highway. And then, suddenly, I was there, on I-5, in daylight. Like no time had passed at all. I checked my watch, 4:15 p.m. I'd been gone 15 minutes, but my fuel gauge showed I'd lost an entire tank, and my odometer had added 500 miles. I drove straight home, didn't stop, didn't deliver anything else, just went home and sat in my apartment, shaking, trying to process what I'd seen. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't driven since, haven't left my apartment. I'm too afraid that if I get in a vehicle, any vehicle, the road will take me back. But I can feel the station pulling at me. Even here, 50 miles from any highway, I can feel it. The coffee cup on my kitchen counter is steaming when I wake up. I don't own a coffee maker. The neon light from outside my window is blue-white, even though the nearest sign is a red 7-Eleven logo. And yesterday, I found an entry in my calendar that I didn't write. Route stop, May 25th, final visit. That's tomorrow. I don't know what it means, but I know I'm running out of time. I'm writing this on May 24th at 11:47 p.m. In 13 minutes, it will be the 25th. The date marked in my calendar. The date I'm apparently supposed to make my final visit to the station. I've been sitting in my apartment all day, watching the clock, trying to decide what to do. I could stay here, barricade the door, refuse to go. But I know it won't matter. The station doesn't need me to drive to it anymore. It's coming to me. The walls of my apartment are wrong. They were beige this morning. Now they're concrete block, painted that institutional green. My kitchen counter has become a route stop counter, complete with an ancient register. My apartment is transforming into the station, or the station is transforming into my apartment. I'm not sure there's a difference anymore. I can hear it now. The pumps outside, click, 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 running constantly. The blue-white neon is everywhere. My lights have all taken on that sickly glow. Even my laptop screen where I'm typing this has a blue-white tint. I went to the window an hour ago, looked outside. I'm not in Portland anymore. Or I am, but Portland has changed. The city is overlaid with roads, highways cutting through the sky, interchanges spiraling into the clouds. And on those roads, thousands of vehicles, all driving, all going nowhere. I'm in the station's world now. The space between spaces. The road between roads. Billy is in my kitchen. I can see him reflected in my laptop screen. He's making coffee. Almost time, he says. I don't turn us around. I keep typing. I need to get this down. Need someone to know what happened. You don't have to be afraid, Billy continues. It's peaceful here. No more schedules. No more deliveries. No more empty apartments and cold dinners and wondering what went wrong with your life. Just the road. Forever. That sounds like hell, I say. Maybe, but it's our hell. Yours and mine and everyone else who couldn't let go of the road. We're all here together. You won't be alone. The clock on my laptop changes to 12 a.m. May 25th. The transformation completes instantly. My apartment is gone. I'm sitting at the counter in the route stop, my laptop on the surface where the register used to be. Billy is behind the counter, pouring 2 cups of coffee. "Welcome home, Mason," he says. I look around. The station is full now. All those translucent figures have become solid, real. They're going about their business, browsing shelves, pumping gas, drinking coffee. And I recognize some of them. Drivers I've met over the years. Drivers who disappeared. Garrett is here, Linda too, and dozens of others. They all look peaceful, content. Like Billy said, no more struggles, no more loneliness. Just the station. Just the road. Part of me wants to accept it, to give in. It would be so easy, but I'm not ready. Not yet. I stand up and walk to the door. Billy doesn't try to stop me. "You can leave," he says. But there's nowhere to go. Every road leads back here now. You're part of the system, part of the network. You can drive for eternity, but you'll always end up at this station. I push open the door anyway. Outside, the roads stretch in every direction. I-5, Highway 101, Route 287. Every highway I've ever driven. They spiral and loop and intersect, forming a massive web of asphalt and white lines. My truck is parked outside. The engine is running. I get in, put it in gear, drive. The first loop takes me down what looks like I-5 heading south. The road is perfect. Fresh asphalt, crisp white lines, no potholes or wear. But there are no exits, no mile markers, no other vehicles except the ones I can see in the distance, also driving their eternal loops. I push the accelerator down, 60, 70, 80. The speedometer climbs, but the landscape doesn't change. The same stretch of highway, repeating endlessly, like a video game level that hasn't fully loaded. After what feels like an hour, I see the blue-white neon ahead. The station. I'm back. I don't stop. I keep driving, taking a different road this time. What looks like Highway 101, heading north along the coast. But there's no ocean. Just empty space where the water should be. A void that extends to a horizon that never gets closer. The fuel gauge doesn't move. I've been driving for hours now, but it stays at 3/4 full. The engine never overheats. The tires never wear. Everything is suspended in this perfect, terrible state of eternal function. I see other drivers sometimes. They pass me going the opposite direction, or I pass them. We never make eye contact, never wave. We're all locked in our own private loops, our own personal hells of perpetual motion. One of them looks like my ex-wife, Carla. She's driving a sedan I recognize from when we were married. She stares straight ahead, hands at 10 and 2, expressionless. I try to flag her down to get her attention, But she doesn't see me, or won't see me. Maybe she's been here longer than I have. Maybe she stopped at the station years ago, during one of those late-night drives she used to take when our marriage was falling apart. Maybe that's where she really went. The thought fills me with a horror deeper than anything I've felt yet. I drive faster, recklessly, taking turns at speeds that should flip the truck. But nothing happens. The truck stays perfectly on the road, defying physics, defying reality. I'm back at the station again. This time, I've only been gone 20 minutes. Billy is outside, filling up one of the old vehicles. He waves at me cheerfully, like we're old friends. I don't wave back. I take another road, Route 287 this time. The one where Wyatt said he encountered his station. Maybe all these stations are connected. Maybe if I can find his station, or Cole's, I can find a way out through them. The road changes as I drive. The asphalt becomes older, more worn. The landscape shifts from Pacific Northwest forest to desert. I'm crossing through different regions, different realities, all connected by this impossible network of roads. And then I see it. A different station. Not the route stop. This one has a rotating sign, Chever, half the letters dark. I pull over, my heart pounding. This is it. This is Cole's station. The one from the stories I'd heard. The legends about the diesel whispers. I get out of my truck and approach the building. The door opens before I reach it. A man steps out. He looks like me. Same age, same build, same features. But his eyes are different. Empty. Like he's been hollowed out from the inside. "You're not supposed to be here," he says. His voice is mine, but wrong. Like a recording played back at slightly the wrong speed. "I'm looking for a way out," I tell him. He laughs. It's a bitter, hollow sound. "There is no way out. Don't you understand yet? We're not in places anymore. We're in the concept of places. The idea of roads. You can't escape an idea. Who are you? I'm you. Or I was you. Or I will be you. Time doesn't work right here. I'm every version of you that ever stopped at a station. Every choice that led you here, every moment of weakness." He steps closer, and you're every version of me that still thinks there's hope. Behind him, I can see into the Chevron station. It's full of MEs. Dozens of them. All going through the motions. All trapped. I run back to my truck and drive. Away from that station. Away from those empty-eyed versions of myself. I don't care where the road leads anymore. I just need to move. But Billy is right. No matter which road I take, I end up back at the route stop. The loop is tightening. The interval's getting shorter. 20 minutes. 15, 10. I'm back at the station again, and this time I don't leave immediately. I sit in my truck, engine idling, trying to think. That's when I notice something. The other vehicles in the lot, they're not just parked. They're sinking. Very slowly, almost imperceptibly, they're sinking into the pavement. Like the station is gradually consuming them, pulling them down into whatever exists beneath this place. My truck is sinking too. The tires are already half buried. I gun the engine and pull forward, feeling the resistance as the asphalt tries to hold me. The truck lurches free, pavement clinging to the tires like tar. I can't stop here, can't park. The moment I stop moving, the station will pull me down, pull me under, make me part of its foundation. So I drive, around and around the parking lot, then back out onto the roads, loop after loop after loop, never stopping, never slowing down more than I have to. The fuel gauge never drops below half a tank now. The station is keeping me fueled, keeping me moving, like a hamster in a wheel, running forever, going nowhere. Hours pass, or days. I can't tell anymore. My watch stopped working. My phone is dead. The laptop battery should have died hours ago, but it's still at 47%, frozen there like everything else in this place. I see Billy occasionally, standing by the pumps, watching me drive past. He doesn't wave anymore, just watches with those eyes that reflect the neon wrong. I see the other drivers too, Garrett, Linda, Carla, all of them trapped in their own loops, their own routes that never end. And I see new arrivals, drivers who just pulled off the highway for the first time, who haven't realized yet that they can't leave. They look confused, scared, like I must have looked on my first visit. I want to warn them, want to tell them to run, to fight, to never accept what this place offers. But I can't stop. If I stop, I sink. And if I sink, I become part of the station, part of the foundation, part of the road itself. So I just drive past them, another ghost on an endless highway, another cautionary tale they won't understand until it's too late. I've been driving for what feels like weeks now. My body should be exhausted. I should be hungry, thirsty, desperate to sleep. But I feel nothing. The station is sustaining me somehow, keeping me functional, keeping me moving. Because that's what it needs. Movement. Energy. The endless circulation of vehicles and fuel and drivers, all feeding into this impossible place, keeping it alive. We're not prisoners. We're the power source. We're what makes the station exist. The realization hits me like a physical blow. This isn't a trap. It's a system. And we're the fuel. I pull over, not at the station, but on one of the roads between roads. The truck immediately starts to sink, but slowly enough that I have a few minutes. I grab my laptop and start typing furiously. I need to get this down, need to explain what I've figured out. The station isn't a place. It's a parasite. It exists in the spaces between destinations, feeding on the energy of travel itself. Every gallon of fuel we burn, every mile we drive, every moment we spend in transit between here and there, it consumes all of it. And the drivers? We're not just trapped, we're batteries. Our endless driving generates the energy that keeps the station alive, that lets it reach out to new highways, new victims, expanding its network. Billy isn't a person anymore. He's an interface, a friendly face to make the process easier, to help new arrivals accept their fate. And I'm going to become one too. I can feel it happening. The more I drive, the less real I feel, the less I remember about who I was before. Soon, I'll just be another translucent figure going through the motions, another ghost fueling the machine. The truck has sunk to its axles now. I don't have much time. I look out at the web of roads, the infinite loops of highway stretching in every direction, and I see something I hadn't noticed before. There's a pattern. The roads aren't random. They form a shape, a symbol, something ancient and terrible carved into reality itself by centuries of trapped travelers. The station didn't create the roads. The roads created the station. All those highways we built, cutting through the landscape, connecting cities, trying to conquer distance. We created this place without meaning to. We made a new kind of space, a liminal space, and something moved in. The truck is buried to the doors now. I can feel it pulling at me, trying to absorb me into the pavement, into the foundation. I'm going to try something. One last desperate attempt. If the station feeds on movement, on the energy of travel, then maybe the opposite will starve it. Maybe if I stop completely, truly stop. Accept the stillness. Stop fighting and stop fleeing and just stop. Maybe that will break the cycle. Or maybe it will just accelerate the process. Pull me under faster, turn me into part of the road. Either way, I can't keep driving. I can't be part of this system anymore. I'm shutting down the engine. I'm getting out of the truck, I'm standing on the road between roads, feeling it pull at my feet, trying to drag me down. Billy is here. I can see him walking toward me across the impossible highway. Behind him, other figures, other attendants, all wearing the same friendly smile. "It's time, Mason," Billy says. "You've driven enough. You've fought enough. Just let go. Become part of the system. It's not so bad. You won't remember the pain, won't remember the struggle, just the road. Forever." I look down at my feet. I'm sinking, slowly. The asphalt is up to my ankles now. And I realize something. I'm not afraid anymore. Maybe Billy's right. Maybe this is better than the life I was living. Driving alone, no connections, no purpose except the next delivery, the next paycheck, the next empty night in another motel room. At least here, I'm part of something. Part of a system that spans all roads, all times, all journeys. I'm connected to every driver who ever felt that pull, who ever stopped at a station that shouldn't exist. We're all here together, in the spaces between, in the roads that connect everything to nothing. The asphalt is at my knees now. I look at Billy. Will it hurt? No, he says gently. You'll just fade. Become lighter until you're so light you can be anywhere on any road at any time. You'll be free in a way you never were in life. The other figures have formed a circle around me. I recognize some of them now. Not just drivers I've met, but drivers from history. People who disappeared on highways decades ago. All of them here. All of them part of the road. The asphalt is at my waist. My laptop is still on, still recording. The last entry. The final words of Mason Hayes before he becomes something else. I'm not going to fight anymore. I'm tired of fighting. I'm going to let the road take me. I'm going to become part of the system, part of the route stop, part of every highway, part of the space between here and there. The asphalt is at my chest now. It doesn't hurt. Billy was right about that. It just feels like sinking into warm water. Peaceful. Easy. I can see the roads from this perspective. All of them at once, every highway in America, in the world. They form a pattern, a network. And I'm becoming part of it. I can feel other drivers, their thoughts, their routes, their destinations that they'll never reach. We're all connected now, all part of the same system. The asphalt is at my neck. I look at Billy one last time. He's smiling, not a cruel smile, an understanding smile. The smile of someone who's been through this before, who knows what comes next. "Welcome to the route stop," he says. "Your shift begins now." The asphalt closes over my head, and I'm everywhere. I'm on I-5 heading south. I'm on Route 101 along the coast. I'm on Highway 287 through the desert. I'm on every road that ever was or will be. I'm the station, and the station is me. And we are the road, and the road goes on forever. I can see them now. New drivers, taking exits that don't exist, following signs that shouldn't be there, coming to stations that wait in the spaces between. And I understand my role now. I'm not a prisoner, I'm a guide. I'm here to help them transition, to make it easier, to show them that the road never really ends. It just changes form. There's a new arrival at the route stop. A young driver, maybe 25, looking scared and confused. He's asking if anyone's here, if someone can help him. I step out from behind the counter, smile. Pour 2 cups of coffee. "Welcome," I say. "Can I help you find something?" He looks relieved to see me, to see another person. He doesn't know yet that I'm not really a person anymore, that I'm something else, something made of roads and neon and the endless spaces between destinations. "My GPS isn't working," he says, "and I can't find the highway. I just need to get back on the road." I hand him a cup of coffee. The road is all around you, I tell him. You never really left it, and you never will. He doesn't understand yet, but he will. After a few visits, after a few loops, after he realizes he's been driving the same routes over and over, burning fuel that refills itself, chasing destinations that don't exist. He'll understand. They all do eventually. And when he does, I'll be here, ready to pour him that final cup of coffee, ready to welcome him home, because this is home now. For me, for him, for everyone who ever felt the pull of the road and couldn't resist. The route stop is always open, and we're always here, waiting in the spaces between, in the blue-white neon glow on the roads that never end, forever.